Welcome back to SPL Week 7. Finch here, joined by Aggro. We just got through watching Space Station get some revenge up against Sanguine and find their win. Now it's time to move on to Knights versus Obey and see if Obey can maybe keep their momentum rolling here a little bit off their very first win here of the season so far. Aggro, what are you expecting in this matchup?
I'm expecting 0 Nike picks being allowed by Pittsburgh Knights. That's what I'm expecting, because Sino looked really, really good on those picks. I don't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I mean, PK is such a hot and cold team. You never know exactly what you're going to get from them. I could see PK winning this set in 45 minutes total. I could see them losing this set 2-0. Like, it's really, really hard to predict any Knights set, let alone against a team that we've only seen in one set, which is this new look Obey with Sino in the jungle.
Yeah, it is hard to know exactly how this Obey roster is going to be playing. I can tell you the things that look different to me in that first set, Aggro, and I want to know if you agree. They look like they're making clearer calls as a team decisively now, and I think we are seeing a bit more individual play out of them. Sino's Gold Fury steal that kind of bought them some momentum back into the set comes to mind. Is that your same read? Do they seem a bit more decisive, like the shot calling is clearer?
A little bit, yeah. I think it's kind of natural at first when you've got a new guy who's going to come in and talk a whole lot like Sino always does. It kind of revitalizes your team, and everyone wants to just, we'll listen to that guy and kind of go with the flow.
There's a honeymoon phase.
Exactly. The honeymoon phase is very strong, and it'll keep going for a little bit. I do think that, yes, Obey got their victory, and you can never take anything away from them and how well they played against Sanguine. But that was not a good performance by Sanguine either, in comparison to what we've seen from Sanguine throughout the rest of the year. And so I do want to caution people about over-expecting something from this team right away. They still have a lot to learn. They still have a lot to go off of. But Inbound looked a lot better as an individual. I thought Ducky still looked very consistent. Wowie looked consistent. Wolfie's play looked to have elevated a little bit. And Sino was a huge difference maker for them. So nowhere close to ready to compete day in and day out at the top level for Obey Alliance, but closer than they were previously.
Yeah, sounds like Aggro's not quite ready to buy Obey stock. I think some caution there is wise. We got to see them do a little bit more. But the Obey guys themselves are feeling pretty good off that first win. In fact, I had a chance to talk to Inbound, the support for Obey, and see how they were feeling. All right, well, I am here with Inbound support for Obey, fresh off their first W here of the season. So I'd be remiss if I didn't start there, man. What does it feel like just for the squad to kind of see that first one go in, to get that first dub on the board?
Really, I think that's all we needed. Just as soon as we get the first one, I feel like the rest of them are going to be a lot easier. We were kind of worried because Sanguine was a really good team, and they played really strong. But I don't know. We're excited to see how it plays out now that we got our first win.
Are you surprised at all that it happened that quickly after you all made the swap up in the jungle? And then talk to me about how much of a difference you think that Sino is making for this roster as well.
I don't think we were worried that it wasn't going to happen, because we were all confident in our own abilities. And when Sino came in, he is an instant improvement, and we started just getting that better feedback. And I don't know, everything. I don't know. It just felt better with Sino. We just didn't mesh with Kurt as well. But yeah.
Sure. I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves in that regard, right? And what about you, Bobby, Inbound, in the support role and kind of making your adjustments here at this SPL level competition? What's that been like for you?
It was a whole different ball game. Even though we had our games last year against SPL teams. Mm-hmm. Just playing consistently against the tougher competition, and you never have an off week or a bye week, and one mistake in the SCL didn't get punished as hard as a mistake in the SPL, and I feel like that's where a lot of my problems came from, where I would just get picked trying to do something that usually wouldn't hurt me, and now it does hurt me because of just higher competition. And I'm slowly learning, slowly understanding what I can do, what I can't do. And yeah, I think we finally found a good spot that I can play aggressive and passive enough, and I don't get punished.
Yeah, it kind of feels like you found that groove here, Bobby. I'm hoping that continues to work. Last thing I'll ask you about are about the Knights themselves. That's who you guys are going to be playing up against here next. This is probably the most patient team in the SPL, either them or Sanguine, super willing to wait for the late game. Do you have to make any adjustments to your play style up against a team like this, or do you all come in kind of business as usual?
Well, I think to start, I shouldn't get body blocked by the Alpha Harpy. The 3v2
Yeah,
was a
let
little
that
too
happen.
difficult. Yeah, but I don't know. Their duo lane did pressure us out a lot last time. They had I think it was like Odin Uller, and then they had the Horrific, and I just played stupid into it. Basically, if I don't play stupid, I'm pretty sure we'll be fine, and we'll be able to team fight against them. We'll be able to play the early game against them. Yeah, just no alpha heartbeat. I shouldn't run into that camp again.
All right. Well, it is always great to get a chance to talk to you inbound. Good luck in your next match coming up here, man, and thanks for taking some time.
Thank you, Finch.
Darn, that inbound guy sure is likable, man. And you heard him talking about how maybe some of what went wrong was a bit self-inflicted. They're going to be hoping that's the case here up against the Knights this time, and hopefully they can rein in some of that same behavior. So I guess it is good to talk about the Knights themselves and the year that they're having on their side, Aggro. And I want to ask you about Scary in particular, because I think that he has been playing really, really well for them this year. They always say that Scary could have these kinds of years. Well, I feel like he's been at that level consistently this time.
Completely agree. He has been probably the most consistent performer on PK, which is a sentence I never thought I would say, because Scary D, his whole career, has had these incredibly high highs and some pretty disappointing lows. Scary has looked really, really good all year long. It's really the rest of the team that I think needs to match that level of consistency. I think Fred has had his really good games, in his games where he just feels a little bit invisible in the jungle, doesn't really put a whole lot of pressure on the map. Paul has had literal 0, 0, and 0 games, and then his incredible performances as well. So this is a team that's kind of their nature. I mean, we saw them 4 out of 5 of these members last year do the exact same thing for a full year and then end up winning Worlds at the very end. So, you know, I'm kind of sitting here thinking this team doesn't need to be second place at any point during the regular season. That's not what these guys are really about. It just means that their fans are probably going to have a hard time getting FP pretty consistently during the regular season. That's really the opportunity cost there for them.
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes when you're going to be voting for him week in and week out, and you're not 100% sure which version of them that you're going to be seeing. A guy that has a lot to do with which version of the Knights that you're seeing on a week-to-week basis is Chuckles, the coach. I had a chance to talk to him as well to get his thoughts coming into this set. All right, well, I am here with Chuckles, the coach for the Knights, and the first thing I want to ask you, man, is that it feels like you all, despite being 4-4, kind of middle of the pack, I don't think you've been out of a single game all year, right? It's always been really close. It comes down to the last minute. So as a coach, what's that like for you? Is it positive, like you guys are always close, or is it maybe a bit frustrating that you can't more consistently finish it out?
I mean, it's a bit of both. I mean, in the moment, it's definitely a little nerve-wracking having to sit by and watch as, 40 minutes in, are we going to win this team fight? Are we not? But it's definitely like in the aftermath when you're analyzing the games and going over what's going well, what's going wrong. It's definitely helpful to be like, we did all this really well. We did this really good, and then we just need to, fix up these 1 or 2 mistakes.
Just a couple areas maybe to clean up. Well, you all are going to be playing up against Obey, who just got their first win. They've got Saito on the roster there now as well. How big of a difference from your perspective has that made for this team, and what does that mean that you all have to change now when you go up against them?
I mean, it definitely changes. I mean, it's not like it's not like we were taking any team, lightly before, but it definitely makes us, it definitely changes things up. Definitely makes the team a lot more, potent, I guess. And we've definitely been preparing, pretty extensively, and trying out a lot of new things. Hopefully, things go well.
Well, hopefully, and one of the things that I've really noticed here for this team is that Sino kind of makes a lot of individual plays. That kind of stuff can be kind of hard to prep for, like that Gold Fury steal he got last week. Is there anything you all do when you come into the match in particular for him, or is it more like big picture gameplay stuff and you kind of play it like normal?
I mean, for any team, it's pretty much always going to be big picture things. There's obviously trends that you can pick up about individual players, pick styles and such. But overall, like all of that in general usually is a team effort anyway. So it's just something you've got to prepare for as a whole. And then, just if there's something to target out, you target that out as a team. And consistently like that.
I got you, man. Sounds like you have your work really set out for you to try to make sure you're ready for this new look Obey roster. Appreciate you taking some time to talk to me, and good luck in your match.
Thank you very much.
I always love a chance to hear from the coaches because you get to hear a little bit about how that decision-making process works for Macro. It's not so much like, hey, we're going to punish Netroid today, let's beat him up, or we're going to punish WoW. We didn't talk about this set more specifically. It's more like if they're going to pick something slow in the long lane, then we'll react to that appropriately. It does feel so much more like it comes down to what these drafts are looking like in the moment and then how they can react to that the right way.
Definitely. As a player, a lot of your prep, the vast majority of it goes into picks and bans because that's the most controllable thing that you can do when prepping for another team. And when a team comes in, you think, okay, they're going to ban 3 out of these 4 gods. If they leave this one open, they'll pick it. We'll pick XX. They'll pick this. They'll pick that. That's usually how you go about your draft. If they come in and they don't ban a single thing you thought they were going to ban, you are lost that entire drafting phase. So, like you are just scrambling to try and pick up the pieces and try and find those holes on okay, well, we thought they were going to ban this, but now we need to, but that leaves open this. And that's how you come away with really good drafts at a competitive level, is you just completely go off the page and really, really surprise enemy teams with what you're picking and banning. And I think that makes a lot of sense with what Chuck is saying. We think that these are possible dual lane combinations that Obey is going to go for. If they go with this, we'll pick this. If they go with that, we'll pick that. And that's kind of the way that you prep as a team for games like this.
I feel like we're getting more and more insight into that kind of stuff across Season 6 and Season 7. Just going to talk to these players and coaches a lot more. So let's get into the picks and bans and see some of those exact principles actually in action. It will be Obey in that first pick spot. And with their new look, I'm not so sure exactly what we're going to be expecting as sort of their top shelf value. Do you think we're going to be seeing more normal sort of picks and bans, or maybe like with this Hellband is saying, trying to limit some of what Paul's going to be doing?
It really is tough to say because Sino is such a player that warps your team identity. You're playing Sino's brand of Smite if Sino's on your team, and you are likely winning if you're doing that properly. Space Station last year as the exception to the rule. So I think that what Obey prioritizes is really up to what sort of team compositions they've drafted and had success with in scrims so far. And obviously the Nike is one of those that we've seen a lot of. No surprise that PK bans that away. I think that you basically have to make Sino and Obey show that they've got another winning composition in the pocket before you're willing to let them win again with that Nike jungle.
The thing is, though, it could be anything now, right? At least before, you could have reasonably thought you'd be up against the Sino Nike jungle. Now you're really not so sure what comes up next. I think there at least is some small relative value to the devil but I think that this is at least good to prove that there is something as that secondary sort of pick around, right? What is Sino going to play here that is at that same high level? Maybe it's just standard stuff that you have tons of reps against that you can be prepared for, but Obey are prioritizing that Merlin right out of the gate, and this is obviously fine, right? Probably can't go wrong taking this Merlin, but on the opposite side, the Knights are hovering that Yamoja, but they'll pivot over to the Bacchus instead for Neil.
I mean, Merlin is significantly nerfed on this patch, though, Finch, and I think he is a lot worse after losing as much scaling as he lost on the Blizzard and in the Fire Stance. It's still safe. I just don't know if it's first pickable. I think it's still playable, but first pickable, I think you lose a lot of value there. And when you're talking about what PK is prepped for, this is a very predictable draft up until this point for Obey, Fafnir included, because that's what Bobby played last week and looked really good on. I think it's very reasonable to expect that PK has nailed the first X picks up until this point. It's really if this Vamana gets locked in that you start to say, is this there for Ducky? Or is this Vamana jungle for Sino? Does he still just look away from the Assassin tab entirely and go towards these warriors?
Yeah, it's just kind of scary to me, though, Aggro. I feel like Shell is becoming more and more kind of the pickup in a lot of situations over that Aegis slot for mid laners, for supports, for junglers, for all these different spots. And once you upgrade it, it's a pretty good answer to this Vamana. I think last week we saw that really well showcased when the Vamana was doing a lot of backline diving. What's your read on, I suppose, Vamana's overall strength right now, especially with how strong that relic is in response to it?
I mean, it really neutralizes the ult. And when you're picking Vamana for the ult, it makes him look really useless. And that's why he was picked last game, or when the game you're talking about, where it was this Ola run that you wanted to be able to protect, so you go double shell into that Vamana on the other team because you know he's going to need his ultimate to have any sort of effect on the team fight. But here, the ultimate is good, but it's not the entire reason you're picking Vamana. You're picking Vamana here because of his mobility, because of his flexibility in your draft. It doesn't tip your hand necessarily. And the ultimate's going to be relevant, so Shell's going to be good for PK, but relying on the Vamana ultimate is not the entire game plan here for Obey. And I think that's why that Renegades composition, where it was all about how much value can Solo Ritual get out of Vamana ult, double shell neutralized that very effectively. It doesn't mean you can always double shell into Vamana. The rest of the team composition, it can be built to beat you without it.
Well, that was your central question earlier, Aggro, to talk more about that jungle solo mix-up. Where was this Vamana going? Well, you might be getting your answer. The Jormungandr locked in makes it much more likely to me this Vamana will be in Sino's hands than instead. And look at what the Knights did. They weren't so sure where Obey were going to be going with this draft, so they banned away the Hunters instead, the Jingwei and the Hachiman, and that should also limit some of those options there for Wowie. So he'll come down to the Xbalanque instead. Still plenty of a strong pick here at this point, but maybe not quite as safe as the Hunters the Knights banned away.
And Yorm has been banned away from Obey basically all year long. There's been a top ban against this team, if my memory serves me properly. So this flexibility warps the picks and bans, whereas PK would have certainly banned away Ducky's Yorm if they had known if that Vamana was going jungle or not. But as you mentioned, because they don't know, they just know they ban what they know Obey needs, which is a Hunter. So I think that Vamana pick really did help Obey in picks and bans.
Yeah, especially if WoW is able to look strong on the Xbalanque. That means they really didn't give up any additional value by letting two Hunters go to sort of guarantee that Yorm for Ducky there. So that I think it puts a lot of pressure on to WoW to kind of show up with that pick, but shows the strength of their flexibility. Meanwhile, the Knights rounded out with the Achilles. So it's going to be some aggression here in Game 1. Let's get it down to Dulce and Mifflin to carry the cast.
Always appreciated, Finch and Aggro. The two guys who have casted 100% of Obey's wins are back for another Obey set. Dolson and Mifflin for Obey versus the Knights and Miff. I love the fact that they brought it up in picks and bans. Already an answer by the Knights. Take away the Raijin, take away the Nike, and both Wolfie and Sino are going to have to try for something different.
I'm excited to see how Sino's going to be able to adapt to playing this Vamana in the jungle. Last time we saw him play, it was Nike every single game, and he was able to effectively disable the enemy's backline. He was always diving, finding these huge CC setups, able to just completely separate the team fight and allow Obey to take disjointed fights, 2 or 3 engagements instead of just 1. If he's able to do the same on Vamana, it should go largely the same. PK doesn't have the best ability to peel off outside of the shell that Finch highlighted on the desk. If Vamana is able to just get off running, Paul's going to have an incredibly hard time escaping him. It could just completely work out the same as it did against Sanguine.
And worth mentioning, I'm not sure actually we've mentioned it in an official capacity, and if we have, it's escaping me. Sino died a single time last week against Sanguine. Even in the game they lost, he died. Well, actually, I don't think he died in their loss. I think he only died in the third and final game of that set where Obey were able to win. So not only did he look good, he didn't die while doing it. And I think a good point that they brought up in picks and bans is this kind of warrior jungle mentality. Nike, the answer is not the assassin here for Sino when the Nike is banned out. It's the Vamana. What kind of playstyle differentiator does that have as a jungler? Playing warrior instead of something like an assassin that we've so commonly seen.
If you're playing an assassin, your entire job is to play around the edge of a team fight come mid to late game and wait for someone to step up a little bit too far, wait for the mage to get left alone for a split second, and then immediately start your dive and look to blow them up instantly. If you're on one of these warrior jungles, it means you can get involved in the game from minute 2, immediately start to pressure anywhere you want, and once team fight phase rolls around, you're essentially a secondary support that does a little bit more damage. You're able to dive the backline consistently and create space for your team. It's more of a facilitator playstyle instead of playing incredibly for yourself. You're able to create space for your carries. So right now, Obey has shown that they're always willing to play through Wolfie. Sino's only expanding on that by continually playing warrior supports, or warrior jungles rather.
And that's, you know, doubly so for Vimana specifically, just sprinting into the backline as consistently as possible. And it's great that you bring up Wolfie. You look at the set that Obey was able to win, and even sets that they've lost previously, Wolfie on Raijin specifically has been a magnet for first bloods. It's game in, game out. 2 out of 3 games last week, Wolfie on Raijin gets first blood. Sino had a first blood in one of those games, so Obey 3 for 3 on first bloods. The answer all this time has been, can they clean up some of the decision making once they get those leads? Because even in their losses, they've been able to find those leads. And I think the addition of Sino, regardless of his picks, has paid off in dividends already for Obey. We see maybe a little bit more clear sight lines as far as what they want to do once they're able to snag a small early game lead.
You know, I'm glad you bring up Wolfie's first bloods. I'm not willing to give him 100% credit for it. 2 out of 3 games, yes, he does get first blood, but both times it was on the wrong you, just kind of ran into his tower,
right.
level 1, got picked out instantly. Wolfie's having a fantastic year, but he's not going out of his way to make these plays happen. He's been playing a very safe play style in the mid lane. He's been looking for farm. He's been farming out the back camps and his waves instead of looking for these aggressive picks. And if that's what you want to do, that's going to be fantastic because the rest of Obey's team comp is going to lean itself very nicely towards that late game. Sino's going to be able to get a lot tankier, be able to dive the back line. Wowie's going to be able to scale up with his passive as well as just leverage that in fantastic sim through X-Ball. And Wolfie on this Merlin, who's going to deal more damage than the Merlin in the late game, maybe Hebo, especially considering its fall.
Yeah, and it's great, honestly, that we talk Obey. They're fresh off their first and only win so far here in the SPL. We've talked a lot about their composition. Other mid laner, though, you brought up Paul on that Hebo. I mean, I think that's in a similar conversation as much as, well, now maybe you have to take away Nike from Sino. I don't know if you necessarily are in that ban category with Paul on the Hebo yet, where you take that one away as Cubo Fred and Neilma take away the purple buff. But you're playing with fire when you give Paul some of these signature picks.
Paul's been playing Hebo for as long as Hebo's been allowed to be played. People don't know it. Paul really does come from a dual background. He used to be one of the ranked 1v1 heads in the world, one of the top ones, consistently playing Chronos, Hebo, and Hell, and he transfers that into his Conquest games, and he's able to just leverage that mechanical skill that he established from countless hours playing this god. Do I want to ban out Hebo? No. Am I going to ban out Hebo if I ever get to play against Paul? Absolutely, because this guy is able to just very easily maneuver around the map. Normally, Hebo, you think of him as a very unsafe pick. He lacks a little bit of mobility. His damage is a little bit closer range, but Paul's still consistently able to free cast in these fights, able to get himself in advantageous positions, find the good trades, find huge damage, and he plays incredibly safe despite the unsafe picks that he takes.
It has been a safe and maybe slow start to this game. 5 minutes and 40 or so seconds in up to this point, and haven't even really seen so much as a gank. Was a purple buff invade from the Knights, which they were able to capitalize on some lane pressure, steal away that purple buff for Neil, so double purple buff in the long lane there. That all surprised, though, with maybe the slower, more patient pace we've seen just 6 minutes in.
Obey showed last week that this is exactly what they want. Normally, I would expect to see PK be the ones bringing the fight in the early game, and maybe they are. They look for the invade, they find it, and there was really no contention from Obey. What's PK going to do in that scenario? Walk into the tier 1 tower? No, we already saw that Rongyu did that against our boy Wolfie, and it doesn't quite work out. So PK is going to slowly start to try and strip away the map and build their lead there. However, Obey's been able to play the map incredibly well, still getting themselves a 500 to 600 gold lead just from splitting the farm a little bit more efficiently. Inbounds taking ever so slightly less farm from Wowie than Neilma is himself, but that's because PK draft a more aggressive duo lane. They're looking to take these fights constantly. They're looking to try and use this Bacchus and get the engagements rolling, get some ganks rolling out of Fred.
Well, from what we've seen, small level differences. Wolfie won over Paul there in the mid lane. Ducky a slight XP lead over Scary D. Some jungle differences as well. Have been some kind of poking and prodding around this long lane up to this point. Haven't seen much come of it, though. Neilma will round out after maybe trying to find a quick stun. Won't end up finding much for it. Do you feel, though, that we've seen maybe a move away from the heavy long lane, duo lane gank priority? I mean, you think back to the first few weeks in you know, maybe despite not playing in this game, like Rival as an example, so much of what they build on their wins, or did build, were, you know, Sam, these big return ganks to long lanes. I feel like there hasn't been maybe as much jungle presence in the long lane recently, or maybe I'm just remembering differently. Is that something you tend to agree with?
There are certainly some teams, Rival, as you pointed out, do really try and focus out that long lane, but for the most part, it seems like the majority of teams are starting to shift their focus towards this more Season 5, Season 4-esque 3v3 meta in mid. It's a little bit less so, you don't see them stack up quite as often, but a lot of the engagements we see start will either happen around the duo side mid camps or directly in the middle of the map. And that's due to the fact that these mages have been picking these high priority, high damage output gods, and we've seen a shift in jungles towards a more facilitator style. So what are you going to do when you're playing a facilitator style jungler? You're going to try and work around the people that are going to deal the real damage. I'm not going to be doing anything, especially considering Sinosure going Talaria boots first. His damage output is going to be incredibly weak, but he still has that dive potential. He still has the engage. He can find the knockups and the slows. He can soak up a ton of the damage, but he's not going to be able to deal quite enough on his own. Play around someone who can. Wolfie, absolutely, on this Merlin. If inbound's around, he can leverage that mana damage and push it even further with Coerce. So you want to look to fight as a cohesive unit, and I think PK are trying to respond to that by putting the pressure in the duo lane and drag the fight over there, or match the pressure in mid.
Well, it's maybe a fight here, as Purple Buff is respawning and Cubo Fred is close by, but Inbound has made his way back over to the long lane, so the Pele might just back around this corner. This would be a 3v2, but Cubo Fred doesn't want to take that fight, so it's Purple Buff right back for the taking here for Obey. Small dance around the Gold Fury, but it's really just Obey at this point. They've locked down those oracles. Ducky made his way deep on the proxy farming there, and specifically this lane. I mean, you talk about jungle pressure one way or the other. As far as rotating in on a Jormungandr, especially one that's proxy farming, I mean, it's a great god to do it on. The escapability is certainly there for Ducky, and gank potential maybe a little bit lower than some other matchups.
Yeah, man. Have you ever literally walked into a World Serpent? He could just go wherever he wants and then immediately transport himself to the other side of the map. If Ducky wants to proxy, I say let him do it. By that same note, Scary D is going to be able to freely farm himself. There's no gank potential over there for Obey either, so both teams are going to have free farming soul laners. We're going to be able to rotate out in the early game if they so choose. Scary D, if he decides to leave lane pre-15, he should be able to do more in a fight than Ducky can on this Jormungandr, so maybe PK try and use that to take a fight around the Gold Fury, try and force an engagement before Ducky can get hit that level 20 mark.
Well, that's double proxy farms here as all of the rotation, or action maybe, has started to make its way back towards the long lane. Neil has been somewhat low throughout the early laning phase here, hasn't been without a little bit of poke. Inbound will leap through, both junglers hanging by this long lane. Burp from Neil will stun one down. Sino has made his way to the long lane, and that's first blood, and a double kill for the Vamana on the rotation to the long lane. Cubo Fred, half HP beneath the tier 1 tower, but that'll keep him alive just for the moment. Things were slow, but suddenly they explode as Sino finds the gank and a double kill.
That was mainly just duo lane pressure from Obey, but look at Cubo.
Cubo goes back in. Wowie will get the kill. Cubo will, though, as well. Risky plays there. Cubo Fred snags one for himself. Ducky under the eye of Paul here, who will crushing wave through, and down goes Ducky. We've seen nothing for the first 11 minutes of this game, and suddenly 5 kills on the board all over the map. We got to take some inventory. Sino with 2. Wowie in a 1v1 dive against Cubo Fred gets 1. Cubo and Paul each have 1 there for their team, so sudden aggression all over the map.
But overall, Obey comes out ahead. They came into that fight with a roughly 1,000 gold lead, now 2,000 in favor of them. And it really did seem like the 11-minute mark ticked around, and everyone in the game says, okay, so we're fighting now. Paul finds a free pick onto Ducky. That's just poor rotation pathing. The fight was already over. It seemed like maybe Ducky was trying to rotate over just in case Gold Free got started up by Obey because the engagement started off so well. But unfortunately, it doesn't. It fizzles out as Cubo was able to find that return kill. And then from there, Ducky's just out of position, and the entire time, what's Scary D doing? Free farming his lane, not falling behind even a little bit. Now he establishes a level lead for himself.
Yeah, small level lead over there as Ducky had to use the TP to get back. Seemed like only it was a matter of time before Sino made his way over to this long lane. Zapman just a moment ago stole away. I think that would have been the second purple buff stolen by the Pittsburgh Knights here. But I am curious on what this power curve looks like, specifically on a warrior in the jungle. Normally you're fearful if an assassin gets a couple of kills early on. But as a Vamana getting a few kills, is the fear maybe of the Knights at the same level as it would be with someone like an assassin getting a double kill early on?
Well, I think you have your answer right here. Do the Knights look scared to you as they pull the Gold Fury?
Yes.
Yeah, SMITE has Atalanta's bow online, but that's just attack speed. His damage output's going to be relatively low, and he's going to be incredibly squishy. So what is to do? PK, force a fight.
Well, the fight is starting out inbound, lockdown, but will leap away. Could be executed. Sino finds the kill. Execute misses from Scary D. The Vamana's on a killing spree here, but Cubo Fred has found the backline. And inbound will finally be cleaned up. That's a good stun from Scary D, and he'll finish off the kill onto the Obey Hunter, but Wolfie will trade one back. Scary D looking a little healthier here, and Paul will finish off the kill. It's a 3-for-3 in a bit of a split fight there, Mifflin.
It could have been a 3-for-2. We really didn't need Fred to blink back in there. That engagement had already gone PK's way, and he just blinks directly into an ice storm. That's unfortunate for him. But PK forced the fight, take a slight lead out of it. Now the gold gap closing up just a little bit. But Sino sure catches out Scary in the jungle.
My goodness, Sino hurts, doesn't he? He starts off this fight, but Ducky is here maybe to finish it. Scary D, no health, no mana. There's a stun from Neil, but it won't matter much here as Sino will pull off of that blue buff. 7 kills on the board, 4 of them in the back pocket of Sino, 1 assist as well. This guy just continues to elevate this Obey team.
I'm constantly impressed. Sino's rotation pathing so quick. The counter gank to get his first 2 kills in that duo lane. He shows up just in time. Obey wasn't quite able to finish up those kills. Sino cleans them up for himself. Now he catches out Scary D in his own jungle, takes a fantastic engagement around the Gold Fury that PK choose themselves. Sino's playing incredibly well, 4-0 on this Vamana, but what are you going to use it for? This Atalanta's bow is going to slow down his power spikes a little bit. Now he's working into what could be either a Masamune or a stone-cutting sword, even a hasten to help him stick onto these enemies. There's a lot that he has here, but he's lacking in power and he's lacking in defense. That's why we're not seeing him use that big baby transformation to really sit in deep on these fights. He's not quite able to dive on a Paul as safely as a Vamana solo might be able to. How well he transfers in the late game is yet to be seen, because this is uncharted territory as far as Vamana jungle builds go for my personal experience. Whether or not he's going to be able to deal assassin-esque damage with this build, I'm going to be surprised to see it.
I suppose that that kind of answers some of that question, though, right? I mean, you might not be playing a traditional assassin, but you're going to be moving yourself into a little bit more damage further on. So now it's the Knights fighting from behind. 2.8k gold from behind, as a matter of fact. Paul does have a couple of kills, though, for himself. So when you look at the Knights and players that you know, I suppose would want to be a few kills on the receiving end here, maybe it is Paul on this Hebo, and, you know, maybe one crushing wave in the late game is sometimes all it takes to turn around a big fight.
Yeah, if he hits a 5-man, that would be absolutely devastating. But even despite being 2-0, Wolfie, equal levels, and Obey going to be the aggressors on this Gold Fury, and Neilma the first one on the scene.
And Neilma is the first one out of the scene. Watch out for Ducky on the rotation from the solo lane. Double knock-up thanks to the World Serpent. Sino chopping away, and Zapman will be able to escape. The Aegis used saves the life of the Pittsburgh Knights Hunter. Wowie moving back in on Cubo Fred, but it's 5 members strong for Obey Alliance. Paul has to Aegis himself to get himself out alive, but Sino's on the scene and drops him down. Scary D will turn around 1 over onto Ducky, and the Achilles is in full retreat mode. 2 for 1. Obey continues to expand upon this lead. Now 4.2k after it was 2 and some change just a moment ago.
Easy Gold Fury, easy return fight for Obey. Now, Sino sure a little bit out of position. Cubo not quite willing to give up his back camp. See how that engagement goes. Sino going to be the beneficiary of that little engagement. 2 levels up in the jungler for Obey Alliance. These guys are playing incredibly well. Again, it really does seem like they have this new team identity. They're pushing leads. They're playing very well. They're responding very quickly towards aggression from PK. This isn't the same Obey as 2 weeks ago. It's the same one that we saw last week. These guys are very willing to play safely, allow PK to be the aggressors, or even wait for them to go out of position and then try and move in towards an objective themselves and play it like that. They're not taking anything risky. They're not going for 50-50s. They're just going for slow, methodical Smite play. This Obey Alliance roster really does remind me of a week 1 or 2 Sanguine.
And the largest difference in this game, I mean, you look at 4,500 or whatever the figure is, 3 levels of difference now in the jungle between Sino and Cuvo Fred, which is massive considering Cuvo Fred has affected 4 out of the 6 kills. The level discrepancy just continues to grow, and now you look at a Pele who's a couple levels behind, some gold down as well. The ramp-up time for this Knights is going to take a little bit on Cuvo Fred, who was able to find a kill early. It's just slowed down a little bit for them.
Worth pointing out that Fred on this Pele 2 levels down is still going to be slightly tankier than this Amana. She's got the Anchile pickup working into that Void or potentially even a Gladiator Shield or something like that. That's going to get him a little bit more defense as well, whereas take a peek at Amana, using that lead incredibly well, goes into the Crusher, gets the Stone Cutting, the Atalanta's Bow, and then going to go towards a more dedicated defense item. Means that he's going to be able to sit in the back line, and now his auto attacks are going to be chunking, and he's going to be able to stick to just about anyone that he wants to, and because he has this huge XP lead, he doesn't need the defense earlier on in the kit. He's level 18, so he's going to be able to sit on Paul very easily, use the healing from his ultimate that he's been able to level up a lot, and just sit there and continually take the fight and engage for as long as he wants. And then he's got the rest of his team to back him up. Ducky's going to be in the back line as well, creating a hard space to traverse for Paul. Cubo is going to have a much harder time diving the back line, as Bobby's going to be able to dedicate himself to just peeling out.
Right now, he's dedicating himself to poking away some damage at Neilma. It'd be worth noting before a potential fight kicks off here, no Cursed Ankh for the Pittsburgh Knights. At least earlier on when we saw Vamana, would usually be one of the relics of choice to try to mitigate a lot of that backline damage. So with that being said, surprised at all that the Knights have foregone the Ankh as one of their actives?
Not so much am I surprised that they foregone Ankh, but not going Shell on anybody, that blows my mind. How are you going to block those auto attacks from Sinosure? Who's going to peel out Paul? Paul's going to be forced into using his ultimate anytime Sino comes within 3 feet of him. And what are you going to do about it? He's still going to be a CC immune giant baby swinging auto attacks as hard as you possibly can. Stone Cutting Sword, Crusher, Atalanta's Bow. He's going to be swinging fast and hard and often. And truly, there's going to be no response from PK to deal with it. They're going to have to look to engage past Sinosure and just try and dive the backline as a 5-man hole, because if Sino is able to get into the backline himself before the engagement starts, there's nothing that anyone on the side of PK can do for the backliners.
You know, put another coin in the Sino jar, because he's been mentioned early and often here, for good reason though. Large reason Obey is out ahead here, but also I think inbound affecting 7 of the kills, keeping pace with Sino. And, you know, watching this Obey team now start to kind of mesh around this new play style, maybe some different shot calls. Inbound on this Fafnir, and you know, even on different picks, has seemed to find some comfort. And Obey are doing a good job of playing around a lot of what Inbound is bringing to the table as well.
You know, I was listening to the Inbound interview, and he said, as long as I don't play stupid, we're gonna win. How do you avoid playing stupid, right? Like, you're the support, you have to be the engage. Put him on Fafnir. That's a long-range engagement that if you miss it, you walk away. If you hit it, go ahead and jump on in there. I like it. It's a safe pick, but it allows him a certain degree of aggression and is going to make his team stronger. If Sino makes it into the backline, drop Coerce on him. Now he's going to be tearing him up even more.
Well, Inbound is the one on the front line here as Primal Fury is looked at by the Knights. Sino right back to the front line as well. Oracle's taken down by the Knights, so while it wouldn't be a mystery to anyone, no potential to sneak away a Fury here for Obey. Absolutely not shying away from a fight. 2 members from the Knights, though, over in middle lane will have to rotate over if something starts to spark out. Instead, Obey are going to look towards this tier 1 tower, half HP. Zapman drops the ultimate. Neil moves in and tries to stun a few, but is unable to do so. Wolfie dove on by Cubo Fred, but some shielding is enough to keep the mid laner alive. Execute maybe searching there, but it's Paul who will finish him off anyway. World Serpent from Ducky will soar on through. Too much damage from Wowie, though, will melt through Paul, and Sino will capitalize on that kill. 2 kills for each team, but it's the Knights on the retreat.
Yeah, they take the fight in the early, but they didn't know that Sinosure was lurking in the jungle. And now, how are you going to peel for him? You got no shell. He's going to be diving your backline for free. Zapman falls. Neil's going to have to back up himself, and now this is a free tier 1 tower, potentially a tier 2. Gold Fury's respawn as well. Obey's on a power play.
Yeah, that's all without the Colossal Fury being used, so Sino will tie it up nicely with a bow. Scary D does have his execute as well. If he's able to go uncontested, we'll search for it, but ends up missing just wide of Wowie. He used his actives just in case. Thorns are popped, and suddenly the Knights are the ones on the chase. Ducky, no World Serpent to get out here, stunned down. Yuma and Scary D will try to combine for some damage, and Wowie's just going to get out of dodge here. Ducky maybe sacrificed, but it would be a long chase here for the Knights. So now you look at Obey, they're able to get a tier 1, a tier 2 tower. Maybe Ducky is the only one that ends up going down. Seems worth it to me, Mifflin.
That's big worth on the side of Obey. I mean, I can already see them typing in their own lobby chats, but now Gold Fury's respawned. One member of Obey is down for 49 seconds. If PK can get their health bars back in line, get positioning around this Primal Fury, they're going to have a lot of time to work with on this engagement. We know that Sinosure's Colossal Fury is going to be down. Wolfie's not quite in position to defend. If they can get Cuvo into the backline, it's going to be very hard for him. Paul's dealing an immense amount of damage. He's already got Divine Ruin and Soul Reaver online. PK might be able to swing this gold lead a little bit back in their favor.
Yeah, Primal Fury down to half HP. Inbound only one in some sort of range, but won't be close enough to steal it away. Gold lead, yes. Pulled back. How much? Not much. Still 7,000 for Obey here. XP lead will match that one as well. Another undying fight for Sino, who has now affected 9 of the 12 kills, and the split push continues. We're now going to have one completely open Phoenix, the right side Phoenix about halfway there on that tier 2 tower, without a Fire Giant being taken down just yet. The calculated play from Obey continues, but it is worth mentioning that Primal Fury that the Knights were able to take away.
They were, but Pyromancer getting burned out instantly by Obey. They take it away for free. Sinosure doing a great job of controlling the pace of PK. He puts pressure onto the tier 2 tower in solo, forces 4 members to rotate there. That creates space for Obey to go ahead and pull Pyro without any contention. And now they're going to have the power play, being able to move out of base a little bit quicker, get to this Fire Giant positioning. And again, this hasn't changed and it won't change because all the relics are already bought. Still no shells on the side of PK. Sino hasn't had to use his giant baby form to dive just yet, but once he does, no one truly is going to be able to peel for him. No Heavenly online, no Ankh online, no shells online for PK. That's just a checklist for Sino to go down. Yep, free engagement here. They have nothing to deal with me. Just going to walk on in, giant baby. Maybe I hit a little bit harder if Fafnir coerces me. Who knows? PK, truly, they had the tools available to shut him down, and instead they take none. Maybe they didn't respect the build coming out from Sino. A little bit unorthodox. Mantle of Discord coming online. He's going to have very little defense, only one true dedicated item. No health truly online for him either. Maybe they thought that they could just deal with him with pure damage output, and you have the gods to do it. Scary D's going to be able to execute him if he falls low. Paul's going to be the one dropping him low, but you have to match his damage output, and I'm not sure that PK can.
Well, with a 7k gold lead, Obey will feel confident in starting up the Fire Giant. They do move back. Scary D will find the stun onto inbound and the execute to boot. A little bit too far forward, maybe, for the Obey Alliance support. Sino on retreat. Colossal Fury used. Won't be here for the rest of this team fight. Darkest of Nights from Wowie will shield the eyes of the Knights just a little bit, but Aegis and the dash no good. Scary D with his second kill in this fight. 3 members of Obey left on the retreat. Half health on effectively every member of the Pittsburgh Knights, but I think job done here for the Knights. We stopped the Fire Giant and got a couple of kills.
One poor engagement's all it's going to take for PK to absolutely punish you for it. Bobby jumps in a little bit too far, a little bit too early. No one's in range from Obey to peel him out. No one's in range to follow up on the stun. Yeah, he found it, but you're surrounded by 5 members, immediately get executed by Scary. Stick to the long-range engagement, then go up with the Dragon form. He transforms a little bit early on, thinking he might be able to blow up Fire Giant, but PK was already there. Now Wowie's dead for 20 seconds. Bobby, no ultimate available. PK are going to have the advantageous positioning around Fire.
It is started up. Wowie's still 10 seconds away, plus travel time over to the FG. Wolfie, Ducky, inbound, closest by, but the Knights are going to leave the FG. It's just Paul in the backline, who has to ult away from the Fire Giant. Wolfie taken down by Cubo Fred. It's Ducky and inbound, though, who are going to continue to move in onto Cubo, who has half HP and will move away. Neil finds a stun over onto Sino, but suddenly it's a 5 versus 4 engagement if the Knights maybe want to turn this around, but Sino will take to the Colossal Fury and try to find some damage, but that's an execute from Scary D. It's a 6-1-3 jungler, but it's a 6-1-5 solo laner for the Knights, and Scary D is keeping the Knights in this game.
Fantastic ultimate usage from Scary. That's how you're going to deal with it. If he's not going to go tanky and he's going to go more damage focused, just blow him up, drop him to low health, and then immediately execute him. That's what Scary D's job is going to be going forward. That's how they're going to deal with Sinosure in the backline. Still though, how often can you rely on that? If Scary D gets caught out, his ultimate is forced, again, you're going to be left with no answer. So that's a tightrope that PK are going to have to walk on every single engagement. How often is Scary D going to be able to leave alone Paul in the backline to try and dive himself? I would reckon not very often at all, is that he's really the only true answer to Sinosure. Right now, Obey throwing a lead ever so slightly. What was 8,000 gold about 5 minutes ago, closer to about 4,000 now. And Fire Giant going uncontested by PK means that they've got plenty of towers left on the map to completely close out the gold differential. One poor engagement is all it took. Inbound goes in a little bit too early on that first Fire Giant pull, and immediately PK turned the game on its head.
1-3-8 is now the mirror for the Obey Alliance duo lane. So what started out well, thanks to a nice Sino gank 20 or so minutes ago, has kind of gone by the wayside. There wasn't a Fury up either for Obey to secure just now, so bad to worse. And now it maybe looks like the Knights are going to return to that side of the map. It is short lane Phoenix that is open for the Knights should they choose to push in there. But I think it's been awesome to watch, not only for Scary D, but Achilles in general. I think time and time again we see these Achilles picked up, and it's just made such a large difference in a lot of games where we've seen him. Fury taken down to half HP and locked down here by the Knights. But what Scary D has done here is nothing short of keep Pittsburgh Knights in this game. Now Sino has to use Colossal Fury trying to escape. Cubo, Fred, and Scary D on the chase. Inbound is here. That's a nice axe to stun down onto Scary D. But that's a 6-1-3 Sino, and you see a lot of the ebb and flow that we've seen here, Mifflin. Scary D is outputting just as much maybe as Sino is.
He's outputting more damage more consistently, and he's tankier, Scary D. And he's also the only direct counter to Sinosure. Scary's in a perfect position to be able to do anything he wants the second that Sino falls down. Barring that, he's going to have to just play in the backline, make sure that Paul makes it out alive, make sure that no one's able to dive him quite as easily, because there are no defensive relics coming out from the side of PK. Until then, the engagement factor from PK is going to be a little bit hamstrung. It's going to be really truly on either Fred or Neil to find the engage with a knockup.
Well, it's been, a 7k gold lead for as long as I can remember for Obey, and it's just now the Knights who have claimed the gold lead right back for themselves. About 1,000. So that's a 7, 8, 9,000 gold swing we've seen here on this Fire Giant play for the Knights. One more tier 2 tower in the mid lane, one more in the long lane. If the Knights want to try to find themselves an engagement. Sino still kind of limping away without that Colossal Fury. Will be up soon, 3/4 of the way back off of cooldown. Fire Giant still a minute and a half though for the 5 members of the Pittsburgh Knights. I think this is smart here. Let's not bite off too much if we're Obey. Let the tier 2 tower fall down.
They really had no skin in the game to defend it there. Now, about, what is the gold lead? 3,000 in favor of PK at 31 minutes. That's nearly nothing. Experience is starting to equalize as well, as the majority of members are starting to approach level 20. The really only experience gap is between those supports and a level 17 Fafnir to a level 19 Bacchus. I'm sure that doesn't impact their decision-making too much going forward. Obey, if they're able to maintain this 3 Phoenix lineup and not lose one before this Fire Giant buff rolls off, they should be just fine to immediately re-engage and try and defend that next Fire Giant, trying to find the dive themselves. Right now, Sinosure has finished up his build. He gets Void Shield to close it out instead of some magic defense, which is interesting to think of because I really expect to see him try and dive deep onto Paul. Paul's going to be dealing the majority of the damage, especially considering you have to be worried about that execute coming out from Scary. I'd have liked to see that be maybe more of an on-Shile or something like that. Instead, Void Shield going to be picked up. He's going to be dealing a little bit more damage, a little bit slightly tankier against these physical targets from PK. But at the same note, he's still incredibly squishy compared to the front line that PK brings. Look at Scary D's build. He's got Blackthorn, Void, Mantle, Runic Shield, Genjis. This man is an absolute unit, and he's probably going to put on his armor on in the next coming fight. No one's going to be killing Scary D unless Scary D decides to die. And that's the absolute truth of it. Whereas Sino's going to have to walk this tightrope of being this backline dive who's kind of squishy, but also wants to sit in the fight a little bit longer to use his healing. It's an interesting play style. Hopefully it works out for him.
Well, it's the same line of thinking as you never lose a game unless you choose to, right? I mean, the only games you've ever lost are ones you chose to lose.
You know,
Scary
that's a
D,
can of worms.
if he dies, it's
it.
because he chooses to die, right? No, I mean, it's fine, right?
Scary D certainly has to choose to die here. I mean, just look at him. He's so tanky, 6'1" and 5. Who's going to be killing Scary D? Certainly not Sinosure, certainly not Ducky. It's really going to be on Wolfie, right. And Scary's going to be peeling out that back line, so no one's coming in contact with him.
I was throwing out the bait to see if you would take it here in the seconds before the Fire Giant will respawn, but luckily the FG respawn timer will bail out that conversation for you. You see what Obey are thinking, though, and it's largely what you thought they would think, is that despite Scary D being massive and difficult to fight against, we're still in a spot where we feel comfortable trying to take this fight to the Knights. Enhanced Fire Giant springs forth for the first time this game. It is the Knights with maybe a touch more aggressive positioning over on that side of the Fire Giant, and as such, they'll have wards a little bit deeper in to see if Obey are coming forward to contest.
I'm going to be keeping my eye closely glued to Paul in this next engagement. He's got the Mantle of Discord online. He's going to be a lot harder to dive in of itself, but he's not sacrificing much in the damage front. Soul Reaver, Obsidian Shard, Divine Ruin, Spear of Deso. He's going to be able to blow up anyone that walks his way, squishy or tanky, and there's not too many tanky targets on the side of Obey that he truly has to be worried about. It's only Ducky that's going to be able to safely dive him. Sino's going to be trading off a lot of his health bar if he even wants to look at him. So Paul's sitting incredibly pretty, and we've already seen that Scary's going to be playing the backline dive peel. That's about the most protect your president-esque comp that you're going to want on the side of PK. Zapman's been having a relatively quiet game himself, electing to pick up the Toxic Blade to deal with some of that healing coming out from Sinosure. He's going to be able to have a fantastic time shredding him away with the kin size as well. But that being said, he's sacrificing crit damage. He's sacrificing a little bit of pen damage. He hasn't quite found the damage output that he's needed to, but no one's really truly been attacking him.
Well, Zapman has plenty of damage onto the Fury, with Paul and Scary D just around the side trying to play bait onto Sino. Looks like Sino did actually use the ultimate just a moment ago to try to escape from that fight. Mifflin, that could be a big game changer here, moving into a Fire Giant fight that could spring out at really any moment.
Yeah, I mean, what's Sino going to do now? He's got no ultimate. He's not tanky either. It's going to be a very hard time for him to find his engagement. He's going to have to try and shift his target. If anything, maybe just look to try and disrupt the backline, go for the knockup. Don't even try and stick into the fight and create space for Wolfie to deal the damage. Create space for Wowie to find his way in. Right now, without that ultimate available, PK have a very easy time deciding to pick up this Fire Giant, and they know exactly where Sino is in mid. They also have completely aggressive ward coverage, so they know where the rest of the team is.
And it's Fire Giant started now as a result of Sino kind of wrangling that mid lane wave towards the tier 2 tower in mid. Half health on the FG. Cuvo Fred lurking off to the right for a flanker on the backside of Obey, depending on where the contest comes from. Peeled off, though, is the Fire Giant. Playing it cautiously, though. Both teams, Cuvo Fred, maybe looking for a backline dive.
Cuvo's just waiting for Wolfie to rear his head for literally a millisecond, and then he's going to instantly dive into the back and just blow him up as quickly as he wants to, especially considering Obey's comp has been so dive-centric. No one's really going to be back there to peel for him. Cuvo's going to have a very easy time making his way into the back line if Obey decide to move up and defend this Fire Giant. So far, it's really only Sino.
Sino moves in, has the Colossal Fury here, and the Pittsburgh Knights will retreat off of the FG. Neoma has to leap over the wall as well. It's Scary D and Cuvo Fred over on inbound here, but inbound will be able to leap away as well. Zapman drops the ultimate and will plug some damage, but not much else as a result. Poking and prodding and It's the Knights now that actually have to go back. This could open the door, Mifflin, for maybe Obey moving themselves a little bit further forward. Ducky does have teleport, so he's going to push out that long lane and get right back into the fight if need be.
Yeah, I'm buckling up and I'm getting ready for an incredibly long dance around this Fire Giant. Both teams have shown that they don't want to take any sort of risk around it. If Obey moves up, PK will reset it. If PK move up, Obey would reset it. They're looking to find that one opening. They need exactly one pick is going to blow the door off of this game completely. If Obey is able to pick up even 1 or 2 kills cleanly, that's Fire Giant and potentially a Phoenix. The same can be said of PK. At this point in the game, I think I favor PK's chances around this Fire Giant just because they have this comp that they can work around. Sinoshure's build isn't going to work nearly as well, considering that Paul's got some defense online. Right now, we haven't seen how Obey's engagement's going to go because PK's been choosing every single fight.
We'll take a quick pause before getting back in. A moment to kind of breathe and analyze maybe, because it's just this tension that's now building right around this Fire Giant. We will jump right back into it, though, and it's the Knights who are over by that FG. I wonder if some of this plays into Ducky as well. Maybe trying to search for a World Serpent that can dive its way down onto that backline. Open up some doors here for Obey.
Ducky shouldn't be the first one in. It really, you want him saving that World Serpent to use it to chase out some low targets, to disrupt the backline once the fight has already engaged, because the CC from it isn't so good that you can really follow up incredibly well. The first one in on the side of Obey, you really want it to be either inbound or Sinosure. Right now, I'm leaning towards inbound just so they can find that stun and then immediately find the damage output from Wolfie. Then Sino can shift his playstyle more towards this assassin-esque Vamana and dive in once the fight really starts rolling. If everyone on the side of PK is allowed the opportunity to look at Sino, he's going to get blown up instantly.
We are full health, full build, full actives, full ultimates, just neither team lurching forward into the full fight just yet. Sino in the mid lane, Cubo Fred rotating through, so both junglers out of the fight. Pittsburgh Knights have started it up, and we have seen this story before where they may just peel off the moment anyone from Obey starts to move forward. Could be a different book, though, this time. Fire Giant taken very low. Ducky inbound, both within range. Could we see another steal from a Jormungandr, or maybe off to the side? World Serpent through, down onto Paul. 3 members of Obey on one side, and Ducky will execute the Pittsburgh Knights mid laner. Fire Giant still half HP, but nobody's looking at it. Obey instead, they're looking to fight. His inbound will leap in. Zapman staggered through. He'll have to jump away. 5 members strong for Obey, and the FG is next on the tape.
What a throw from PK. There are so many question marks in my head. They immediately decide, and once it drops to 30%, that they want to disengage and take the fight or back up and force Obey in. But Paul's left completely high and dry inside of the Fire Giant. It gets reset to him. It drops him to about 30% health before anyone from Obey even has to move in to hit him. Of course he's going to die. You guys left him alone 100%. Now Paul's dead for 30 seconds. Neil tries to move back up and find some heal. He dies himself. Fire Giant now and 5 members of Obey. That's just a huge question mark for me. You can't leave your Hebo alone like that.
5 members strong for Obey, all with FG. Right side Phoenix taken quite low here. 10 seconds on Paul, 20 on Neilma. So there's still absolutely a chance for a full 5v5 fight underneath one of these Phoenixes. There's a tier 2 tower that maybe should be soon to fall here, and Obey Alliance will seem to agree. We're barreling towards one of these Phoenix defense fights here for the Knights. How confident are you in the Knights squad to be able to put up a good fight?
Their siege defense is a little bit weaker. Their main tool to keep minions out is going to be Zapman on this Huyi. The Reigning Suns is going to be a very good dissuasion tool to move in. But once that's down, Paul is going to be a very close range focus god outside of that water spout. Cubo is going to have a much harder time diving with the 5 stack of Obey standing in front of him. And Obey's siege is incredibly strong. Ducky's going to be able to get into the backline, as is Sino, as is inbound. If they decide to use that Dragon Form Coerce, any objective that they're allowed to touch is immediately going to get blown up. Wolfie's been under literally 0 aggression so far. He's been able to just free cast in the backline for the last 20 minutes. No one's been quite able to dive into Obey's backline, as Cubo's been caught out multiple times trying to gank Sinosure in mid. right now, Obey is in the driver's seat, and I think they've got a really good shot on this siege. If PK want to defend, it's really on Neil to find this huge flop into the backline, and then immediately all of PK are going to have to surge forward and take the fight outside of the Phoenix.
And Obey have plenty of time to do it. 2 minutes remaining, counting down on the Fire Giant buff here for themselves. Everyone in the game, level 20, everyone in the game, at least somewhat close to their full build outside of, pots and consumables and things of that nature. Looking like the full 5-man push down this long lane, though, with Sino flopping over to that mid lane. The 4-1 split tends to be a fan favorite here, but you have the Phoenix all the way over on that right-hand side of the map here that somebody from Obey is going to have to deal with. Right now it's Scary D, so it's a 4-1 split for Obey, but it's kind of a 2-2 split for Knights in the back of their base. Fire minions not completely cleared. It's going to collapse in on the Pittsburgh Knights base. Phoenix just starting to be poked down, but Obey Alliance may be playing it slow, waiting for the right moment to engage.
I mean, they've got plenty of time to work with now. 1 more minute on their Fire Giant buff. Right side Phoenix is already down and pushed up towards that Phoenix line.
Fire minions.
Paul's been split up as well. Now, Obey's in.
Here we go, Mifflin. It's Neoma in onto the front line. Wow, he has been dunked on. Has to burn the actives, but Cubo Fred will put him down. Ducky World Serpents his way through. Titan under attack, but it's only the Fire Minions. Cubo Fred is going to get burnt down by Ducky this time. Sino, he's on the Titan with the Fire Minions. The rest of the fight might not matter. Paul, he's got himself a double kill, but Sino, Mifflin, he's got the damage. Obey Alliance, they complete the turnaround, and game number 1 is theirs.
It just seems like PK forgot that right side Phoenix was already down. They tried to push it up before that last engagement, but not quite enough. Scary didn't finish off that first wave that he moved into. Immediately it floods into the base. Sino says, oh, you guys are going to fight over there? Word, man. I mean, your Titan's way more valuable. Maybe you guys try and defend this next time? Not this time, though, and takes the game for his team. That is an incredibly nutty end to an incredibly mediocre Fire Giant defense / dance. Towards the tail end of it, it was sparks flying for PK. They were able to find the defense, but not the defense of the Titan, which is the one that matters.
Yeah, I mean, up and down, gold, XP, you look at those graphs, it's like a roller coaster as far as that game goes, but it's Obey that takes an early lead, loses the lead, and then roars back after Fire Giant is taken away. They continue their winning ways here. They win a set last week, and they're up 1-0 over the Knights. Finch, Aggro, what do you make of it?
There's a lot to try and break down there, Dulcin. You and Miff did a great job on the cast. After big sets like that, I really just want to be able to kind of take a seat, you know what I mean? Just relax for a little bit, kind of really go back and break down everything that I just got through seeing. And there's no better way to do that than getting one of these Maxnomic chairs. $50 off when you use code SMITEMAX. Make sure that you're hopping in, getting your custom logos on there, and upgrading your own personal throne at home. But I do think that Aggro, there is a lot to break down in that game that we just watched, because Obey were way out in front at the top, and then the Knights kind of clawed their way back in, I want to say almost single-handedly, thanks to Scary. But then that last fight, they're able to get back there towards Paul, and I think that's because you saw Sino win a 1v1 up against Kivo in mid. What did you see happen in that last fight that gave him that open?
Yeah, for Obey, it's Sino diff, basically, from what we saw before. Yeah. Not only does he open up that whole game for Obey early on with the gank on duo, picks himself up a double kill, he's out farming Cuvo basically all game long, and then ultimately this dive onto Paul, because of that 1v1 in mid lane, and just the space that is created by this draft from Obey. That during the time where Obey was starting to lose their lead, it's because I think they were losing a bit of their identity on what they needed to be able to do. They kind of got lost in what they were supposed to be doing in these team fights. What's everyone's job? Where do we all need to be? Clearly this team still has some room to grow, but that's exciting because they're still finding wins in spite of that. Sino just played out of his mind again on this Vamana pick. And then you want to talk about what this guy brings to the team. He single-handedly ends the game. Finch, when it looks like Obey might actually end up losing it at the very end. I mean, one player does not make a team's problems or fix a team's problems, but I think that with Sino's style, the way that he's come into this team, the difference in mentality that he's brought, and just that breath of fresh air, I think, is really what Obey needed, and they look like a completely different squad.
They absolutely do, and you know what it's really done? It's allowed these strong pieces to kind of shine, right? I mean, it's easy to forget just how strong Wolfie was as part of that Rival run across those 2 years or so when they played Cyclone GG onto Rival. He's looked better now with this new version of Obey. Ducky, I think, finally happy to have someone else helping him out. He's looked so much better having someone to share the load with, and even Inbound, I think, at times looked better throughout this game. I can't say entirely because I think he is almost single-handedly the reason why they lost a lot of their pressure. That Fire Giant fight, he uses the ultimate at the beginning so that they can burn it right away, and then he forces an engagement once they realize they can't burn the objective. That costs them a ton of their momentum, but for the most part, he's looked a lot better to me too. I think that great players, you hear this in basketball all the time, they make the players around them better, and I think that's what Sino has done for this Obey roster. Everyone on the team looked a lot better with him on it.
But still, they have to clean up some of those moments, and I think that you really do when all of your eggs are in the Sino basket early on in the game, kind of leaning on him to get you these early game leads. It's inconsistent because teams are going to start to pick and ban you out. They're going to try and pick strategies that invade him and put him behind. I think that so far, I agree with everything that you're saying, that everyone has looked better on Obey. But it's taken until the mid-game phase, right? It's really been Sino carries some early game engagements, and then the whole team kind of rallies behind that. If I'm PK, I'm not letting them get to that point. I'm picking something heavy pressure in duo, and I'm running it down again, just like we did in the first set against them. I think that's the adjustment I want to see PK make here. Don't let the train get any momentum here for Obey Alliance. Just pick pressure and start running it down.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We don't have any bad players in the SPL, so everybody is capable of winning games at the 30-minute mark if it's even, right? It's just a question of how do you get there up against the best of the best, and Sino has kind of gotten them there, and just how long is that going to actually be workable for this team? We'll have our chance to see if there's big adjustments in the picks and bans for game number 2 to maybe limit some of what Sino can do. They already banned away the Nike from him right away. Are they going to ban away the Vamana too and make him prove that he can do it on something else? We will have our chance to see as the Knights will be in that first pick spot this time. Obey will be second. And one of the things that was really interesting was that because it was Vamana, remember, the Knights didn't know what to ban in that second ban phase. They banned away 2 Hunters. They didn't ban away Ducky's Jormungandr that game. I wonder if Obey will be able to find that same flexibility in the draft this time to kind of open up the rest of their draft too.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that as Sino spends more and more time at the SPL level, people are going to remember what he likes to play. They're going to figure out what he likes to play from previous sets and that kind of stuff. So that level of flexibility, I mean, I think that Obey could just put the Vamana jungle or solo. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be this. It has to go jungle, and you just don't know that it's going jungle definitely until later on in the draft. You get to see that draft, see it develop. I think that Ducky is more than capable of playing that Vamana. And Sino was certainly capable of going something else in the jungle. It just so happened that they felt like that was the best lineup for that draft. But I like what PK's done here with these picks and bans. I mean, Fafnir, Nike, Merlin, take Obey off of 3 comfort picks right away. Specifically, you want to make sure that Bobby's off of one of his comfort picks and Wolfie as well. And I thought that they might be looking to first pick the Raijin to put Wolfie further down in the God pool, but with Obey leaving this Camazotz open, PK likely feels like they kind of have to make this pick, and that opens the door for Obey to, I think, pretty likely grab a Raijin here.
I think so too. Give that over to Wolfie. They'll also top pick the Vamana. It looked good last game, so I suppose I understand, but there's just so many strong picks. Maybe they're trying to pick this early to make the most out of their flexibility. But I want to touch a little bit more about this Camazotz. Scary D, we talked about him at the top of the set, and yet again, he popped off with those executes last game. I like the idea of giving him someone that can bully in lane and then have a big impact when he rotates out as well.
Yeah, I think it's a wise idea. You want to put Scary on a carry god because he's carried you as of late.
Yes,
but I do think that a lot of that is because he's getting to bottom pick his gods at times. But Camazotz has been the constant top pick for this team. PK has really prioritized his Camazotz pick a lot, so it doesn't surprise me too much to see him go for it. But as I always say with Camazotz drafts, I need to see CC elsewhere. You get 2 knockups here from Jingwei and Hebo. Those are good, but still a little bit unconfirmable. I want to see more confirmed CC from PK as the draft goes on.
I think it's worth mentioning how impactful the execute was up against Sino in general, by the way. There are a bunch of times where the Vamana didn't get to do the healing he wanted to do or stick around in the fights that same way. So even though I think the Camazotz let Scary kind of play a little bit more aggressive into their style, it might open up the door for this Vamana jungle, which it certainly looks like now with that Osiris pick coming in. It might open that door up a bit more. Also, are you surprised at all that they kind of give up the ghost that it is the Vamana jungle run back this early with the Osiris lock-in?
Probably not. I mean, I think that Obey, truthfully, I think Obey doesn't know exactly what they want to pick for duo lane right now. Or they're trying to pick something that has a lot of available counters, and they're trying to save it for later in the draft. So this this Osiris pick, it's not ideal that you are giving away that this Vamana's jungle, but you know their solo lane matchup. Osiris doesn't really care that much about what else is happening in the draft. He's going to chop his way through the team no matter what. I mean, he's still 1ing and 2ing and gets a bunch of free damage mitigation. It's not that important. So Osiris is just a safe pick at this point if you want to develop something a little bit different later on in your draft. And I think that's exactly what they're doing, because saving your support pick for last tells me that Bobby's going to go with something that we don't always see in that support role. That's at least my guess.
Something fairly punishable. It definitely won't be the Emoja or the Terra. That has been taken away by the Knights and makes a ton of sense, right? You don't want to deal with either one of those. It'll be the Hachiman for Wowie. Certainly no headlines there. That's just a safe, normal hunter. So really we're waiting to see what it is that Bobby wants to play. Meanwhile, the Knights picking up the Circuit, and this is certainly something Cubo Fred likes to play if this ends up in his hands. It could also still potentially be for Neil, but that won't be a mystery for long. We'll know once this last pick comes in. And it looks like it is going to be for Cubo. Neil will instead be playing the Kepri for those revives.
I like this draft for PK. They got some pretty good confirmable CC from a distance with this root from Kepri. It doesn't feel like a lot, but it can really work well. I like the Circuit anti-heal against the Vamana quite a bit. It's also one of Cubo's best gods. Hun Bats is still on the table, and I think that could have been really good, but they really clearly wanted to prioritize this anti-heal for the Vamana.
That looks to be the case. It is going to be the Ganesh to round things out. And this silence could potentially be strong, maybe to catch this Circuit out, trying to complete that combo, or maybe catch Habois and prevent him from escaping there as well. I think there's some options for this Ganesh. Plus, the Dharmic Pillars feels great in team fights.
I think it's a good Ganesh pick. It's not what I was expecting out of Obey. I think that they might have been looking for something like Circuit with the way that they were picking and banning. But when a really good Ganesh comp just kind of drops into your lap, I don't think you're that upset about it. You don't have any Wombo combos on your team. You know, there's no Naja ult or Cerberus ult where you can guarantee a whole bunch of ticks at Dharmic Pillars. But a good old-fashioned silence against a Camazotz who's not going to have beads, or a Circuit that's going to be on top of your backline, it never really hurts.
Well, let's go ahead and get into game 2. No way Obey find a 2-0 sweep here, do they?
Hey, maybe this is what we need to get used to, Finch, and Obey in set points here. They win it last week, and now the Knights have to win 2 straight in order to prevent themselves from being the second straight team to fall for a newly resurgent Obey. An interesting start, though, Mifflin. You know, before making any specific points, look at this from Scary D, starting on the Obey Alliance red buff.
Maybe he's worried about some early rotations or the pressure that maybe Raijin can get, but just stealing away that buff is going to be so huge. He's not going to be giving up too much of farm either. He's just not going to lose out on a wave, as Osiris has to clear out his blue first as well. So we're going to see the TP come through. He gets there in time for the wave. He should be able to solo out his blue buff incredibly easy. That's just a free... Oh, blue's already down. Yeah, that's free dubs. Free dubs for them. PK going to go ahead and win out that early jungle rotation.
Whoa, action over on the other red buff, and it's Wolfie and Sino who are going to find Paul trying to secure their own red buff this time, and won't result in anything there, despite Paul maybe, or rather than Paul maybe having to go back early. Realistically, though, I mean, I think the early buff steals is a conversation, you know, we've had from time to time, maybe more annoying than anything. But as far as a great start here for the Knights, apparently anything you can do to get Sino a little bit behind is maybe the direction you need to go.
Not only Sino, but they stifle Wolfie's early game oppression. He's going to have a lot worse clear now. He's not going to be able to abuse the fact that Hebo's clear in the early game is a little bit weaker. So now his clear is slowed down, his rotation path is slowed down, red buff XP no longer on the table, and they should have the timer for it going forward. Yeah, PK come out ahead wholly from that. And it was just clean pay. The only thing you really trade off there is that the TP's used a little bit earlier on, so if Ducky's able to force out Scary, he's going to have a long walk back to lane.
And they have been actually pretty aggressive towards one another taking these fights. Scary D, of course. I mean, it's always sneaky, misleading maybe is the right word when watching a Camazotz. I mean, you could be low health one moment and then immediately sustain yourself up just a moment later. So, you know, it's a fun lane to watch, and I think that's something maybe we've seen, not all the time, but a decent bit, Mifflin, is picking this Osiris into the Camazotz.
It's one of the few picks in the game that has fight potential there. You're not going to be able to quite match the sustain that Camazotz obviously is going to have just because it's built into his kit. Heals on his auto attacks, heals on his 3, heals from his 2, and he gets to remove himself from the playfield and become CC immune while simultaneously dealing damage with Bat Out of Hell. Yeah, Scary D's on a pretty good character here, but Ducky's going to be able to deal with some of that healing by using his ultimate. He's going to be able to deal with some of that sustain by using that really low cooldown in conjunction with Berserker Shield or Gladiator Shield and just continually stick to the fight. And it's going to open him up to some gank potential if that ultimate's ever forced out of Scary D. Then you could start looking for that infinite slow from Osiris and some of that continuous damage from Vamana. But the likelihood of that happening is incredibly low just because Scary D is playing Camazotz, one of the safer solo laners to pick. So maybe that doesn't really come to fruition. But so far, PK have done a good job of slowing down the farm from Obey. Sino's coming online a little bit slower than he would like, as is Wolfie. Paul's already got his ultimate available. He's been farming up incredibly well. Now Hebo's going to be dealing a lot more damage earlier on. Raijin's not going to be able to match that pressure. And in that matchup in of itself, Hebo's got a fantastic 1v1 potential there. If Raijin ever uses the ultimate, that's a huge, slow-moving target for a crushing wave to just slam.
And remember, you talked about slowing down Sino. Game 1, it was really that rotation, the gank for a double kill on Vamana. That kind of started the snowball there in game number 1. And in this long lane, a different look at some of the support god pool that we've seen. Neil over on the Khepri and inbound, of course, on the Ganesh this game. Kind of a different vibe maybe from both of those supports. You know, Neil obviously looked to root, pull some back, really there for those pesky revives. But inbound as well. I mean, obviously you dash forward and find some stuns here, but not quite as full-on divey maybe from either of the supports locked in this game.
It really does seem like both teams are looking to play through their carries. Inbound's going to have a much easier time playing Peel this time. He can engage from afar again, like he does on Fafnir. He can just drop the Dharmic Pillars as far away as he wants and try and slow out people that way. I like the picks from both squads. Huge fan of Khepri so far in Season 7. It's going to be able to make him allow Paul to get Blink instead of Aegis or something like that and have him dive into the backline and then immediately get returned to his own team through that Khepri ultimate. I like what I'm seeing from both squads.
Watch out for pressure over by the blue buff. Dharmic Pillars drop down by inbound. Cubo Fred will try to pull back the Ganesh. It's shell popped early by inbound here. Paul is here, has the crushing wave, but will use it defensively. Blue buff pressure, name of the game there for the Knights. But also smart play, I think, not diving too deep. Paul maybe could have gone for the delete onto inbound, but instead will back off and not lose much for it.
Yeah, he doesn't want to lose out on any of the farm there. Had he gotten the kill, he would have lost out on a wave. Yes, you get that first blood bounty, but you'd likely have got the return kill onto Wolfie. So it would have been a net positive for Obey, I believe. So that's good discipline from PK to realize this aggression might be a little bit misplaced. Let's go ahead and back out, see if we can reset it, and look for a better fight elsewhere. Right now, both teams are showing a ton of respect to each other. Slow play in the early game, mirrored by game 1. 6 minutes in, no first blood, no real established gold lead either. Obey, despite getting a small invade in the early game, now about 100 gold up. That's clean play. Right now, PK, they're the ones that want to leverage that early game. They want Scary D to rotate out as early as possible. Have Cuvo look for some early aggression as well and find those ultimates. Right now, Obey is completely content to just sit down and wait for Sino to get his items online.
Well, the similarities don't stop there. Granted, it's 6.5 minutes into the game, but every item, down to the blessings, is mirrored from roll to roll here. Teleria boots for both junglers. You know, so quicker rotations looking at it there. The Devos Gauntlet picked up for both of these hunters here. So obviously similarities and maybe what these teams are trying to do early on in this game, Mifflin.
They both have incredibly safe hunters, so foregoing the boots first pick to get those stacks online a little bit earlier on makes sense to me. Wowie getting a little bit of better end of this engagement here, just forcing Zapman to back up, but the rest of Obey already on the purple.
And they're going to look to move in and just secure that one down, and Sino is here for the help. And even that small moment, you know, whenever you see a Ganesh locked in, I always love it because I personally love Ganesh, but the fight, the anti-dive potential absolutely there for Obey. And even small moments like that, you throw up the silence and it turns around a potential purple buff invade. Sino has to use the Colossal Fury here over back towards the Obey Alliance purple buff. Dharmic Pillars as the rotation from inbound is here. Neil locked down, and Sino, hey, one more time, give first blood over to the jungler for Obey Alliance, right back on the Vimana, right back on the board. But it's Cubo Fred. He's now blinked through, re-engage. It's the dash right back out, though. Obey Alliance, he'll get out alive with the kill and take down their own buff.
Defend the buff, get first blood on a Cynosure, check. Okay, well that's a good start for Obey Alliance. That CC chain that we saw, the Ganesh 3 into the Cynosure Vimana 1, that double knockup, Neil was locked down for so long, he had no opportunity to use the ultimate on himself. Not that it really would have created that much space for him. Maybe we would have saw Circuit rotate back in to try and peel him off. But that was just clean counter-aggression from Obey, recognizing that PK are moving a little bit too far up into their jungle. Now 1-0 is the slash line, about 700 gold in the lead are Obey. No true lead established as of yet. Cynosure looks like he's going to go into the same build, get that Crusher online, maybe immediately move into Atalantas again. He's going to be a little bit lacking on the tanky front, but still, no Shell, or Shell is online actually from PK this time. So they don't have to worry about that nearly as much. Paul's going to have a much easier time dealing with this backline dive from Sino, but by that same note, Sino's getting off to an amazing start. Doesn't matter if you have that Shell online early if he's already a level up.
I suppose that's kind of an interesting topic now to maybe dive into, because we've seen a similar start, not a double kill first blood for Sino, but a kill on the board. Do you think there's enough differences in what the Knights have drafted and picked up relics-wise that will limit Sino, or do you think there needs to be a total playstyle maybe overhaul from game one to limit what the Obey jungler was able to do?
They've done more than enough. But let's
maybe
hold that
this,
thought if
Mifflin,
Sino gets
maybe an
aggressive.
airstrike for Zapman will help clean up some of the onslaught that Sino brought. Dharmic Pillars down by inbound. Wowie finds the kill over on Neoma. Paul has eviscerated the health bars of a couple members of Obey. Blink away from Sino. A double kill, though, from Wowie. Paul, he's on the chase this time. Doesn't want to let the Hunter get away. Cubo Fred has found some low health targets here. The dash is through. Paul with a couple. Wowie with a couple. And it's a 2-for-2 fight.
That's why you ban Hebo against Paul. That crushing wave completely changes the fight. Obey was in the driver's seat. It's still a 2-for-2 trade, but Obey would have gone away with a 2-for-0, or even more so had Paul not immediately dropped two members to about 1/10 health and then sold off another himself. That's clean play. But back to the question you asked earlier, PK's draft has got plenty to deal with Sino's aggression. Neil's going to be able to single target, revive anyone that Sino decides to dive. They've got the Shell online. They've got the anti-heal inside of Circuit's ultimate. They've got the safety that Jingwei brings. There's plenty coming out here that they're not going to have to worry about that initial dive from Sino. It's the prolonged engagement that PK are going to have to be worried about. It's whether or not Ducky and inbound can be stopped on the dive. It's whether or not Wolfie's able to blow up that front line nearly as easily as he was last game. Right now, Wowie's been having a fantastic set himself, and he's got a 2-1 lead.
Whoa, Paul, Wolfie, that's not where you want to be. Right back beneath the Pittsburgh Knights. Tier 1 tower, crushing wave, rolls through, essentially executes the Raijin in the mid lane. And even apart from kind of keeping Sino down in this early game, I think it was important for the Knights, now that Wolfie back on a signature pick in this Raijin, slow him down. Even if he's not getting first blood every single game, he's finding some kills. There might be one here for Ducky. Scary D trying to sustain Cubo Fred in on the rotation. That's enough to keep the solo laner alive. Cubo Fred wants a little bit more, though. Blinks through, stuns down. Scary D drops the bats, but Cubo Fred will leap forward. He's got the tower aggro, but he stays alive. The gank successful for the time being. Can Sino pull some back? He pulls back one. The return shot hits the double. Counter gank from Sino. This man cannot be stopped.
Right now, this whole game can be spoken up in 5 or 6 words. It's the Sino versus Paul match. both 3-0, both getting a slight lead over their counterparts.
God.
Now PK going to be the ones pulling the Gold Fury themselves, but inbound's already there. But Paul should have the engagement and the confirm. They reset it.
Yeah, Sino isn't close by to fight in on this one. Gold Fury is reset, as you point out. One ward kind of deep in there for Obey. Zapman didn't have to use the beads in that fight just a moment ago, so we'll still have those for maybe a Gold Fury rotation here. You know, you mentioned Paul versus Sino, Mifflin. I'm wondering where maybe confidence levels are for both of these teams. You look at something like a Gold Fury being started up here and how the scales can tilt so importantly after an objective like that is taken down. You get 3 kills on a jungle Vamana, you got 3 kills on a mid lane Hebo. Maybe who walks into that fight with a little bit more swagger?
It's almost certainly going to be PK, right? They're the team with the better history. They also know that Sino's on the other side of the map, so they should be able to move into that Gold Fury relatively uncontested, but they do get deterred a little bit by inbounds rotation in. PK are the team that have to prove something here. If Obey loses a set, no one's going to bat an eye. They have the comfortable underdog position, and they're the ones that have to really step up and prove that they are going to be contentious. But by that same note, PK have to prove that they belong up here. It might be a little bit more stressful having to deal with a team that has nothing to lose when PK really has everything to lose.
Right. Yeah, PK are kind of firmly middle of the table, quite literally at 4-4. Obey at this point, and I agree with the point Agro made. If we're taking a moment to kind of zoom out looking at both of these teams, I mean, this is still very much an Obey team that is fresh off a recent change, and they have a lot of building and growing to do. And so I think you could still look at a team, and if they end up going on to lose here against the Knights, they've looked infinitely better, and maybe that's realistically all you can ask this early on for Obey. But they want the win. They won last week. Obey want to win again this week. It's going to be tough, though, and the Knights are going to lock down that Gold Fury. Dharmic Pillars just off the mark. Paul will roll through, and that's the 4th kill of the game for the mid laner of the Knights. Wowie, a touch too far forward. Cubo Fred on the chase. The leap is there off the ultimate. Goes Obey Alliance's Hunter. Aegis not going to be enough. That's a double. A delayed double maybe for Paul in the mid lane. Cubo Fred saves the life of Neomach here, and Wolfie is rotated on through. Tycho Drums will pour out some damage, but it won't be enough to save his life. Cubo Fred has a couple kills in this one as well. Scary D, he's on the chase beneath the tier 1 tower. Knock up, knock down. Scary D will lock down the 5th and final kill of this engagement. Wasn't a full deicide because Inbound is back on the respawn, but that's a clean sweep.
Gold Fury and 5 kills for the side of PK. What was a slow game is immediately blown wide open. Now 3, close to 4,000 gold up. Sino didn't even get a chance to play that team fight even a little bit. I heard everybody look out, coming through. That's Vamana's 1, by the way. Great impression. And then he was gone. I blinked and my man was literally missing from my screen because the damage output from PK was so concentrated instantly. He does find the huge knockup, but it wasn't quite enough to peel out the rest of his team. Obey meander on into Gold Fury after it falls and get picked off one-on-one essentially. Now both objectives going the way of PK. Tier 1 tower going the way of PK. 5 kills as well. This game got bad pretty quick.
It's blown wide open, but we have seen now between these two teams as much as a 7k gold lead one way or the other, and questionable dives, you know, maybe a support too far forward, a fire giant fight that's a bit misguided, and then a 7 to 8k swing the opposite direction. So both teams, I think, have shown up to this point that they're able to stay in these games just as much as they're able to kind of walk themselves out of it. I am curious, though, your thoughts. We've mentioned the Khepri, we've mentioned the Ganesh a good bit up to this point. Not specifically on Neil and Inbound, maybe, but as far as both of those gods locked in go, have you seen maybe what you were hoping to see from that style of support 16 minutes in?
So far, Inbound hasn't quite been able to find his footing this game. The peel isn't really there. The engagement factor has been a little bit lacking outside of that one counter engagement on their own blue buff that PK started up. Outside of that, Inbound's been just really struggling. Gets picked out on the Gold Fury before that fight even happens. He gets picked out on team fights as well. Scary D gonna have to use his ultimate here, but the rest of Obey already ready.
Yeah, no more charges on that bat out of hell. Wolfie is here to play. Can you trade out a kill onto Sino? You're at least gonna get the Colossal Fury started up. Scary D though, oh, Neil is here for the play. Will ult down onto his solo laner and saves his life. What a play from Neil. Frustration absolutely there for Obey. They think they found a free pick onto Scary D, but Neil is there to save the day.
Yeah, that touches on the second half of that question, whether or not this Khepri's been able to find effective play.
Perfect.
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say so. He's finding the free revives. He's going to be able to use it to allow Paul to dive the back line. Now that PK have the lead, they can start using this Khepri ultimate a lot more aggressively, allow for them to have these more kamikaze-esque plays, maybe have a crushing wave directly into 5 members, and then immediately have them return to your back line at around half health. PK are in the driver's street wholly at this point. 6,000 gold in the lead, aggressive comp as well. They should be able to try and force a fight around any objective that they want. Now that mid tower's down, Pyromancer and Gold Free as well, they'll likely return to farming until one of those easier objectives respawns. And then if they get a pick off that, Fire Giant's definitely not off the table. They have fantastic damage output. Crit already online for Zapman. Paul's going to have very low cooldowns to continually slam these objectives. And he's got the best confirm for an objective in the game right now. Inside of literally just water hands would be enough, but he could use Crushing Wave.
Inbound learns the hard way that just a couple abilities from Paul will chip away half of that health bar. I mean, then you start to look at Obey's scoreboard, and it's kind of familiarity there, Mifflin. 3-1-2 for Sino. Wowie's got a couple of kills here as well. I mean, maybe at this point it's a foregone conclusion, the answer is. But is Sino the route back into this game for Obey? Or is there somebody maybe else that jumps out at you that you can maybe play through for Obey to start to win some of these fights, maybe find a pick here or there?
It's up to really Ducky, Sino, and Wolfie as the core 3 to find these engagements, and that's why we see them stacked up on the other side of the map. Scary D forced to use his ultimate again. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Now they're going to return back to the fight, but the entirety of PK has already got them routed.
Wolfie has to use the beads and the Thunder Crash to get away. Tycho drums as well, so it's a lot of utility burnt by the Obey Alliance mid laner. So if a fight starts to brew here, Wolfie just have the good old normal ability cooldowns, but it looks like the Knights won't go fishing for much more. There is a Primal Fury up and waiting. And Mifflin, maybe that's where Pittsburgh Knights start to turn their attention.
Yeah, I would say so. They've got the 5-man stack. They know the ultimate downs for Wolfie, so they won't have the range to engage. But look at Obey. This might be a sneaky attempt at a Fire Giant as they group up on the other side of the map, or even just a pick on Scary, who doesn't have his ultimate available.
Oh no, this is a 5-man chase. They either thought Scary left, or they were going for Fire Giant all along. You started it up, Obey. You've reaped it, but what are you gonna sow here? It's Paul rotating through, finds a big knock-up. Sino, very low health. Colossal Fury will help top some of that up. A Shell helps save some health bars for Obey Alliance. Zapman airstrikes through. It's a double kill for the Vamana, and he's found Zapman low health in the back line. Obey are only down 1 member. Pittsburgh Knights are down 2. Zapman will get rid of Sino, though, this time. Scary D locked down by inbound, and Wowie will finish off that kill. It's a 3 for 2. Obey Alliance just a bit ahead, but can Zapman get away? I'm not so sure. The stun is in, and Ducky will finish him off. A full 4 sweep. Only Paul escapes alive.
Man, Obey had no right winning that fight. Immediately they get caught off the Fire Giant, have to reset it because Scary D's in their backline. Already the entirety of PK is there, but Neilma gets a little bit overzealous with the use of his ultimate, and then immediately, once that's on to Zapman, the entirety of Obey shifts their focus towards attacking everyone else. Zapman already ulted out of position towards the backline, means that he can truly be ignored. He can't move up very safely. Sino looks for the kill, doesn't quite find it as he dashes in, has to deal with that crit coming out from Jingwei. If you're going to step to the king, Sino, you best come correct. Zapman puts him in the dirt. But still, that's a fantastic engagement for Obey. They close the gold gap just a little bit, now closer to 5,000 in favor of PK. Fire Giant uncontested. Pyromancer still up. Obey can look to defend it again or return back to farming.
Something about these Fire Giant side fights that kind of mitigate a lot of the leads that we've seen here. Mitigate is the prime word there, because it's still 5K for the Knights up to this point. It's bend but not broken, absolutely here. A small dip, a small drop in the bucket, if you will, for the Knights. Still confident, still out a little bit ahead. You brought up the crit. Zapman moving into it. Wind Demon locked down. Looks like a Spectral Armor maybe for Ducky to try to mitigate some of that high damage that Zapman will be outputting. So maybe that tips their hand a little bit. Ducky is going to try to find his way into the Knights backline.
If it's Sino's job to shut down Paul. It's Ducky's to dive on a Zapman, and it's almost reflected in the builds a little bit. Look at all that defense coming out from Ducky. Look at all the damage coming out from Sino, reprising that same build from game 1. But it's going to be a lot harder to deal with it now that you're 6,000 gold in behind, and the entirety of PK have aggressive positioning and wards.
Inbound, a little bit too far forward here. Locked down. Dharmic Pillars will not disengage the fight away from him. Scary D, bad out of hell, was there just to swoop a little extra damage and maybe re-engage the fight if the Knights wanted it instead. Eyes turns back towards this FG. 4 ultimates still ready to go for Obey. It's Sino deep in the backline, rounding about. I'm not sure the Knights realize he's there. Don't have wards on this side of the Fire Giant pit. The fight breaks out. Sino, he's found a free route onto Paul. Paul catches the revive, and it will be used. So back to Neil. He goes. Paul, though, shrugs it off, turns it around for the kill, but it's 2 now for Obey Alliance as the fight rages on. Wow, he drops the banner right onto Zapman's head. 2 members of the Knights left retreating. 3 members of Obey left alive. Nobody risky enough to attempt the FG.
It's so easy to say that that fight turns because of Sino's fantastic positioning to find the knock-up on a Paul, but truly, Wolfie makes a heroic play there, jumping in to chase the revive, finding the damage in exchange for his life to put the enemies on PK in the dirt. Fantastic play out of Wolfie just to get the most value that he can out of his abilities. He knows that at his health bar, being at about 10% there, even if he does escape, he's going to have to go back to base, which is technically a TKO. So instead, he trades out his life to get 2 members falling on the side of PK, completely stifling all the aggression that they might have once had. What was 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 gold earlier is now closing up closer to 4, maybe 3,000 in favor of PK. That's fantastic play. They've slowed down the Fire Giant push. Now 23 minutes, 3.5k gold means nothing. It was 8,000 experience literally 1 minute ago. Now it's closer to 4. The level gaps are starting to close. Sino sure establishes a lead. 6, 2, and 5 is his slash line. Obey's doing a great job of hanging in there despite even having inbound fall before the engagement truly starts.
Well, game 1 myth when we brought up that was kind of Sino versus Scary D. Those were the 2 at 6-1 and something about this time into game number 1. This time it is Sino versus Paul. 6-1 and 4 on Paul. 6-2 and 5 on Sino. Maybe the largest differentiator, though, in this one. Zapman has started to get a lot of that crit online. As mentioned, maybe Ducky builds into that spectral armor, but Wowie as well. 4-2 and 4. So this Hachiman, both of these hunters really are going to be swinging despite, maybe an iffy slash line for Zapman. 4-2 and 4 for Wowie, looking a little bit better. This is always potentially there on the table. Zapman looking towards the Fury instead, trying to take the fight with Sino. Colossal Fury is there, but it's a disengage instead from Obey as Paul lurking around the side. Inbound catches the water carpet. Knock up not just used yet. Still on the chase. Cubo Fred, though, underneath 3 members of Obey Alliance and will dash out there. Looks like, though, Mifla and Obey are the ones whose health bars are a little bit worse for wear.
And they had to use 3 ultimates, whereas PK only had to use 2. So now the aggressive seat is in PK. Their health bars much better off. Their actives a little bit skewed there. They lose the blink on a Scary D, but they maintain those team fight actives. Shell and Frenzy still available. If PK decide to move into Fire Giant, they should still be favored in the fight. Dive potential from PK is fantastic. Neil maintains his ultimate. Zap's going to be able to stay safe with his. Scary D going to be able to dive that backline incredibly effectively, especially considering Raijin ultimate's down. They've got some time to work with. Instead of going to Fire Giant, they pick up the Gold Fury and reset. They're going to get the ward advantage, but Obey going to have plenty of time to get these relics back online, get their ultimates back online. I would have liked to see PK push that lead just a little bit further.
And a lot of it, maybe not for a lack of trying. I mean, aggressive by that Fury. Even saw Zapman completely turn his attention from completing the Fury and then moved over to take the fight. Was locked down nonetheless by the Knights. So all 3 of the Furies in this game have been taken over by the Knights. And it's been the ebb and flow of the game. There's been a massive gold lead on the Knights side of things here. But a bit of a different look, though, whereas Obey in their last win in game number 1 were a shoo-in to be contesting a lot of these fights. But maybe it's just too much of a differentiator at this point, too much of a differential gold, maybe a touch in the XP category as well for Obey to feel very confident in trying to contest some of these major objectives.
It's already been surprising to me that they've been able to contest all the objectives that they have in the past. It's due really to Wolfie's fantastic damage output and Sinoshire's ability to get behind the enemy team, find the CC, find these priority targets. If PK play it slowly, defensively, Ward, as well as aggressively, they're going to be able to mitigate a lot of those losses that Sino's been able to make by getting into the backline. Neil's been using his ultimate a little bit early in some of these engagements and hasn't been able to quite find those priority targets. If they are to clean that up, this should be a clean, easy Fire Giant for them.
Fire Giant started for the Knights, taken low. A couple members of Obey awaiting in the wings. Zapman might just be able to finish it off on his own. Neil is here, though, to help. It's only Ducky who's off to the side. The Knights, they'll lock this one down, and Paul will find the kill onto Ducky as well. In the mid lane, Cubo, Fred, and Sino doing battle. Colossal Fury might time out here in just a second. Cubo will not re-engage after that. So Sino still feeling confident. But the fight rages on. Right side tier 2 tower has been dove and foregone. Scary D and Zapman, they'll combine for a couple of kills. And underneath the right side, Phoenix goes Zap. What a courageous play there. Has to burn the Aegis. And a shell used by Neil just to keep him alive. But now Cubo is re-engaged over onto Sino. Up, down, he goes. Just needs a little bit more damage. I'm not sure the mobility is there. And Sino will escape alive.
Man, Zapman went absolutely sicko mode on that Phoenix. It looked like PK wanted to back up, get the tier 2 tower. Neil, you see him start to walk away, turns around, sees Zap taking the engagement under Phoenix, dashes in, has his shell forced out. So maybe the engagement under this Phoenix is going to be a little bit lackluster from the side of PK. Obey might be able to defend it. Never mind, it's going to fall just about instantly. No one quite up in time to defend themselves. Phoenix now going the way of PK. Fire Giant the way of PK. The engagement, the same can be said. Now the gold lead, although only about 10, 15, 13,000. I'm so bad at math. It's so sizable at this
point.
That's
rule one, Mifflin. No math on cast. Anything that requires more than single-digit addition or subtraction is always dangerous, and I've learned that the hard way. I even mess up. I think Aggro added 9 and 6 the other day and rounded it out to 16 or something like that. I'm dragging him, and he's not even on the cast, but always dangerous. Nonetheless, though, the Knights have moved themselves back to about 4K in the lead. We've reached that point, though, Mifflin, where Obey are seriously considering how they're going to defend these Phoenixes. Only 2 of them left standing. What does the defense for Obey Alliance look like to you, and where does the confidence level maybe stand?
Wolfie's going to have a really good time finding his damage in these fights. The game simplifies on Siege. It's going to be a 5-on-5 or a 4-on-4 engagement. If Wolfie's able to blow up the backline, deal multiple targets of damage with his ultimate, and make sure that he's not just dealing damage to one, so that Neil won't be able to get that high priority ultimate himself, then he can stifle some of that aggression. If they get to push them back even a little bit, Obey that is, that's when you're going to start to see Ducky diving into the backline. Sino sure as well. Wowie's going to have a very easy time finding huge ultimates himself to slow down the entirety of PK. That being said, PK's dive is fantastic. Paul's going to be able to find himself in the backline incredibly easily. He's got that safety net inside of Neil Ma's ultimate. Scary D's got the exact same, except he's got Bat Out of Hell in the wings as well. Cubo going to be able to shut down the healing from Sinosure. It's a grim, steep battle that Obey are going to fight through here on this engagement. Now 15,000 gold down. Yeah, I said it. I don't know.
Oh, wait, I told you not to do math, and then I did it wrong like 2 minutes ago? Did I say, I think I said 4,000 a minute ago when it was 14,000. I gotta practice what I preach here, but you're right, it is 15, 16K, not 4 or 5 or whatever it was I said a moment ago. Simple math is a 3-2 split, though. Knights in the mid lane, Paul will be the floater. Left and right, he'll go. Ducky and inbound here underneath the long lane. Phoenix, Scary D moves himself forward. Paul catches the Dharmic Pillars. Wolfie into the Taiko drums. Ducky, Sino, they found Paul, but nobody else from Obey Alliance is here. Paul might have to use the ultimate to crash through. He does. There's a Khepri ultimate on the mid laner, so he'll stay alive. Sino is able to survive thanks to the Colossal Fury as well, but Cubo Fred finds the last ticket damage. 2 members of Obey Alliance down, 5 strong for the Knights.
They're still healthy, Obey. The 3 members there. Paul is already half health, as is Cubo. The Phoenix still just barely hanging on by a thread. Obey might be able to stop the aggression here, but the minion waves are already flooding their Titan.
There's a TP in from Scary D as well. Hey, remember for Obey, all it took were some fire minions in Sino last game. There's fire minions on the Titan. About to be some more in the long lane as well. Zapman and Wowie doing battle with Neilma. Full-on retreat. The rotation over from the Knights. That's one blink in. You can't even see who it is. The crits ringing through from Zapman. They'll connect over on the inbound. Scary D leaps through. He'll connect over onto Wowie. It's Wolfie against the world, Mifflin, and I got a feeling we're headed to game 3.
It's gotta be the case. The healthy targets on PK are gonna be so hard to deal with. The Titan's already burning away, 10% health. Wolfie didn't even get the chance to leave his fountain before his Titan fell. Clean play from PK. A little bit of indecision in the mid game might have slowed down that victory, but again, a 1-1 is the set. I don't know. It could go either way, and you can say that about any game in the SPL.
I agree. At this point, I could not tell you. The maybe largest stat to look at is, despite being 6-3-5, 3 deaths in a single game is the most we've seen from Sino. I think combined. I think he's died twice combined in his previous 4 games. So apparently, Mifflin, the Knights do a good job of mitigating Sino and kind of keeping the Obey jungler at bay. And it goes without saying, we are headed to a game 3. It's a toss-up here at this point, but hopefully Finch and Aggro will be able to tell us a little bit more.
It's a toss-up in this set, but you know what is not a toss-up? You're going to want to make sure that you log into SMITE and pick up that Lightbringers Battle Pass, because it is your last chance. It's going to be going away on May 18th. That's the Monday that is coming up. It unlocks 4 exclusive gems, 4 exclusive skins, 200 gems, and even more content. The Divine Right Jingwei is in there. Radiant Archon. Ra, you're going to make sure that you're running around as a Ra, right? Laugh spamming for everyone to enjoy. So make sure you're picking it up and having a little bit of fun in your games as well. So now, Agger, we can get back to this set that we're currently in the middle of, which is, just as Dulce was saying, pretty close. Basically a toss-up between these two teams. No, Bay even had a chance to win this last game. What felt like the big difference maker here for you that let the Knights find this victory?
Paul, it's real simple. It's one word. It's just this Hebo, man, in the mid lane. Paul, early on in the game, big rotation over to the left-hand side, hits a massive ultimate that changes that whole team fight. And every team fight after that, Paul is now the priority because he's a Hebo that got good farm in the early stages of the game. So now you're going to have to try and deal with him. This is the ult I'm referring to. But after the fact that Paul has all this farm, he's already really hard to kill because he has some of the best positioning and relic usage of any player in the SPL. And now you're going to have to deal with him having a Khepri on his side.
Yep.
I don't really know how you do that, and neither do Obey, because they're really unable to do anything about it. Sino still has a very good game on this Vamana, but clearly the game plan there of using Cuvo Fred on this Circuit to be a shutdown conduit and make sure that he's not getting off as many ultimates as he wants to, and just living through everything. I mean, PK just had a lot of the pieces together, and then ultimately got Paul ahead. And that's really what ended up being the difference maker.
It is, man, and I think that you're right that it's Paul, but I kind of want to give even more credit to the Khepri pick. I think that's how disruptive it was. If Paul is the sniper, then the Khepri is the 300 yards of distance between them that allow him to successfully line up his shot. That dive that Obey did, this clip we're watching right now, that would have worked if it were not for Khepri, right? I mean, Paul dies there, and then Sino and Ducky are able to recollapse on that fight and help that defense, but instead, every fight that they went into, it had to be this calculus of how do we force out the Neil Ma ultimate first. I think the only fight they lost around that FG that allowed for Obey to kind of get back into it was one where Neil had a suboptimal ultimate on this Khepri. It's a difficult task. You either take away Sino's ability to dive, or you make it so you can just res whoever it is that he dies. They're both kind of pulling the same thread.
And at the end of the day, you look at that damage taken chart, 9,000 player damage for Paul that he took that game. Wolfie was at 15,000. Under 10k damage to take in a game is absurd. And then you have to think, of that 10k damage, how much of it ended up not mattering because Scarab's blessing was there? And that's really the struggle. And so now, I think that if you're Obey, you've got to find a way to, maybe you put Sino on Thanatos, or if he still refuses to play an assassin, you can give him Achilles, because that's an execute that doesn't involve the assassin tap, or Ao Kwang. If you're going to let this Khepri go through, I think you have to come in with a pretty good game plan, because just running it down and hoping that we can kill him before that Scarab's Blessing is there, or we could use that Ganesh, silence to silence out Neil, that just didn't work. I think it's pretty clear that was not the exact vibe for Bobby, and we got to find a different pick for him.
Yeah, I think that a lot of those pieces on Obey that you mentioned in game one, who maybe only looked better in the late game, didn't quite get there here this time, as the Knights looked a lot better in game two. But game three and the picks and bans that lead into it, I think should be a pretty interesting story here, because now there's so many threads, right? We have to see, what is it that Sino picks in the jungle? Is it going to be the Nike? Is it going to be the Vamana? What about the support pick for the Knights? Will they run this Kepri again? Will Paul get Hebo for the third game in a row in some cosmically unfair universe? I don't know, man. I think there are a lot to look at here in this picks and bans.
I agree. I think I love picks and bans, man. It's one of the most fun parts. Yeah. I could just do a whole day of just picks and bans and see how they evolve throughout the day, because I think it's such a critical part of competitive Smite. And Obey decide that they're just going to bite the bullet and do what every team feels like they have to do, but no team wants to do, which is spend multiple bans on Paul every single draft phase. Honestly, Obey should count themselves lucky that Persephone isn't allowed right now, because otherwise they would have to be banning that every single time as well, because he's just too potent on too many different gods.
Speaking of things that are allowed and we haven't seen, Aggro, are you surprised we haven't seen more Horus up to this point? I mean, I feel like just the last week or two he was a priority pick, and we haven't seen him at all today.
I agree. I think that it is a little bit team comp dependent. Like, if we were seeing United or Rival, we would likely be seeing Horus being picked and banned. I think that it is play style, the way that your team wants to play the game. I think that it can be a good pick against something like Vamana. Giving that protection and that heal is usually a big difference maker. You can just 3 to your carry who's getting stomped on, and then up down with that ultimate just over a wall. That'll get them out of danger. But I think that we just haven't seen it because of the way that the game has gone.
Well, we can just go ahead and go right to the post-game screen, I assume, at this point. Go ahead and get someone ready here for this, because the Nike jungle has been locked in, not for Sino, but on the other side for the Knights. And this Nike jungle, I don't know, man. I feel like it just kind of wins games here at this point. Are you on the hype train for this Nike jungle, too, and all that damage it can deal? It might not even necessarily be Nike jungle. It might be solo for Belair, but still, are you fully sold here on this pick?
I am. I'm a believer, dude, in the Nike jungle. Nike, the goddess of victory. I mean, it's right there in the name. How could you possibly lose? I don't know. I just think that it brings a lot in terms of the passive. It's not anywhere near what it was before, but it's still very relevant for a team. She has a massive, unmissable, gigantic, a slow, 40% slow, that lasts for 6 seconds. 6 seconds. That is an eternity in a competitive setting. You can't miss it. She's got a lot of damage that you just can't miss. Rend is huge. It's just confirmable damage. That's really, really easy to live on this character as well. She's disruptive enough. Yeah, I'm a believer in the Nike. And as Drake said, man, checks over stripes. So you know it's got to be good.
And if you were wondering if the Nike maybe would go solo like I was for a moment there, nope. With this Amaterasu locked in, that should all but confirm it. We so often see Ama solo. She's going to be seeing Nike. Very likely jungle here, plus the Raijin paired with that. This is a scary top 3 picks for PK. But look over at Obey. They have convinced Sino to play an assassin somehow, and that's going to be happening on their side. They've got the Merlin locked in for Wolfie that he has looked very comfortable on, that he had in that game 1 victory. And Ducky's back on the Yorm. I know the Knights have 3 really good picks right now, but how do you think Obey did here in their first half?
I like it. I still don't know that I really love the Merlin first pick here for Obey. I mean, I know Wolfie looked good on it in game 1. I still think that he's likely getting a little bit overvalued after the nerf. But especially because you're giving Paul Merlin or Raijin, who cares? He's getting one of those. They're very, very similar gods. I think I would have preferred to see Obey take the Nike first overall. But
yeah,
you end up with Yorm Thor. That's not too bad at the end of the day, but we just know that Sino's Nike it's a known quantity, right? It wins. We know how effective he is on that pick. The Thor is still a little bit up in the air, though. Of course, Thor is a very strong jungler. Sino's a very strong player. It's not exactly a plug-and-play pick in my mind. I think that Thor is a pretty unique play style, and not every jungler is naturally going to excel at him.
Well, it looks like Run It Down is going to be the call here for Obey Aggro. They now pick the Hercules, which I got to think is for inbound in that support role, with the Jormungandr likely going over to Ducky, which means this is just a ton of aggression. Aside from this Jing Wei, they are going to be active from essentially minute 1, I'm thinking, with this type of draft. And then PK on the other side, they now pick up this Chernabog. This gives them some rotational ability. Bacchus can delay a lot of that aggression too. I wonder if the Knights are even going to let Obey be all that aggressive.
I mean, PK has really good tools throughout every stage of the game, but I do think they scale much better than Obey's composition does this time around. So I want to see Obey try and put pressure around mid and on the right side of the map, but Yorm doesn't really pressure that well. All he does is make sure that you're not losing on that side of the map. It's really going to be up to inbound. Anytime you've got a Hercules support, it's how much effect can they put on the map in order to earn us a victory early on. Give us some leeway and let the Merlin and the Thor and the Jingwei and the Yorm really come in and fill that gap towards the mid game and carry it home. So this game is really, for me, what inbound's going to do on the Herc.
Yeah, and that is a decision by Obey to put inbound in the driver's seat because they let that Nike go with that first pick. But Obey with a chance to maybe find their second set winner. Well, the Knights shut them down here in Game 3.
Mifflin, history continues for you and I. We're the only two who can say we've casted an Obey game win this year in the SPL, and now, or a set win rather, and now they're on the verge of maybe doing it for a second time. Interesting picks though for the Knights. A little bit of thievery maybe. Hugo Fred taking the Nike into the jungle. Paul piloting that Raijin in the mid lane, and I think what stands out most of all is what they brought up on the desk. It's Sino playing something outside of that warrior-type jungle. He's going to be having a Thor to pilot this game.
If anyone in the chat or you yourself, Dave, are worried that Sino sure doesn't have a Thor,
well,
this man has a Thor. He has obliterated me on this pick more times than I can count, and I don't want to recount it now.
Tell us about this. No, go ahead.
No.
What was the last time you played against Sino on this tour?
I want to say 2016, and he beat me up real good, but let's move past that. Obey's on a timer this game. They have got a very strong early game-centric comp, and it's not to say that their late game is terrible, but PK's late game is absolutely insane. So Obey's looking for early aggression and constant aggression.
Well, they found it on a Cuvo who has to blink away here, and just a moment ago you could see inbound aggress over onto Zatman, who had to burn the beads away as well. I think that I also agree with another thing Finch and Agro sort of mentioned on the desk. I think a lot of maybe success in this game stems out of inbound. I love the aggressive Hercules pick, but it's got to be well-placed aggression.
This has been Inbound's MO since day one that he picked up a controller. He's been on these aggressive picks. He's looking to make plays in the early game. Recently, once we've seen the shift to success for Obey, he's been picking a lot safer. Maybe getting back to basics is what they're looking for here. Having Jormungandr in your solo lane means you can leave him on an island. Having a Thor in your jungle means that every lane, barring that Amaterasu, really needs to be worried about ganks. If they can really leverage this Hercules in the early game, get a huge lead, I'm talking, I want them up 6K by the 20-minute mark. That's when Obey is really looking to take this set. If they aren't able to establish a huge lead in the early game, they've got Nike passive to contend with. They've got Bacchus, who's going to scale incredibly well in the late game, one of the tankiest Guardians in the game. They've got Zatman, the hunter with the literally best stim for any hunter possible in the late game, and a global ultimate into that. And they've got Raijin just waiting, who's going to scale incredibly well there. If PK are able to make it to that 20-minute mark, 25-minute mark unscathed, Obey's going to have an incredibly hard time finding a dub here.
Well, I think one thing, and obviously we've sort of mentioned Sino, that being the hinge factor in inbound as well, needing to find these early ganks, early pressure on this Thor, absolutely the name of the game. What does that Nike, though, kind of feel like here in this early game? We've obviously seen what Sino can do on the Nike, turn these big games around. Certainly not a god without early game gank potential. But if you're loading in here against Sino, take us back. You know, you're playing against Sino. He's on his Thor. I mean, you already know you lose. But if you're playing Nike, what is your mindset maybe in this early game to try to counteract some of what, well, Sino maybe now is looking to do with a rotation through to the long lane? We'll find the stun down on the Zatman. Does not have beads. The wall times out just in time, but inbound finds the knockback. Hey, you don't need an ult to gank, apparently, Mifflin, and Sino will rotate through and help inbound find first blood.
That was a fantastic rotation. No way for Zapman to deal with that wall, especially considering the mana he was at. To answer your question, if I'm Nike Jungle, I'm just looking to match rotations. I know that I'm going to be able to farm up and get my team that passive no matter what. So I'm just trying to slow down the aggression that Sino was able to get. If I know he's going to ult into duo lane, you better believe I'm hovering the duo lane so I could drop my big ol' slow and disarm to try and stop some of that aggression. Outside of that, wait for the late game. Trust the fact that Paul is going to be a late game beast and just ride the game by the seat of my pants from there. The deck is really in Obey's hand at this point. They have to continue putting on this aggression. Right now, almost a 2,000 gold lead. It's not enough with the draft that they have, especially considering how strong PK's late game is. They're going to have to continually pressure out this duo. They're going to have to continue to try and find some picks on a Paul in the early game. Early Gold Furies is the name of the game for Obey.
Well, early aggression is the name of the game for inbound, and the wall will just force Paul off to the side. Zapman maybe did have beads a moment ago, but you can't CC out a well-placed wall from Sino. He takes to the Anvil of Dawn. He might look to re-engage on this one. It's blue buff instead. That's dunked down on by the Obey jungler, but that's most of his mobility until the one comes off of cooldown. A slight stagger as the Knights have found a rotation in, but Ducky has the World Serpent as well. Pulling attention over to the short lane side of the map is Obey. Nearly got some kills, but everyone from Obey is able to get out alive.
Unfortunate from Obey. That was well-placed aggression, almost picking up the kill on the Paul, just barely out of range on the hammer, and then trying to get that consolation prize and that blue buff invade, just barely stolen away by Scary D's ultimate. Nothing really works out for them there, but they don't lose out on anything either. Still, 1,300, 1,500 gold in the lead are Obey. They're able to continue putting on the pressure. They didn't lose out on anything. No leads established by PK just yet. So if Sino and Inbound decide to maintain this group up, maintain that fight presence, PK are going to have to play incredibly safely. Obey, at any point, if they find a pick, they have burn potential inside of Merlin. They can look towards Gold Fury. They have Wowie as well. Zapman now under duress.
Yeah, Sino finds him, and it's just the 2-tap, and actually Zapman is going to use the ultimate. Wants to move back in onto Sino, but Zapman doesn't have any mana, and Neil is here as well. We'll find the up-down. You gotta admire the aggressiveness there, I think, from Zapman. Immediately takes to the ultimate, moves back in behind Sino, but unable to finish off the kill.
Man, I thought Sino was dead there. Well-placed beads gets him out of the root, and then the knock-up from Wowie is really what confirms his life there. That's well played from Obey, but still, even engagements or losing engagements, not what you're looking for. 7 minutes, the time is ticking by. Your early game is only going to last for so long. You have to find some sort of foothold if you're Obey Alliance.
What was the metric you set? Like 5 or 6K at 25 minutes is what you wanted to see from Obey?
That's what I'm looking for, yep.
5 or 6K, all right. Let's see if Obey are able to move their way there. Sino, he's returned over to this long lane. Another good wall and another kill for Inbound on the back of early pressure from Sino in the long lane. What was it, last game? Game number 1? I'm like, where's been all of the long lane guy? Well, why have, some teams started to shift focus? Well, Sino pushes that by the wayside. Poor Zapman ganked twice. Really no room for beads. I'm not sure to stay alive, and nonetheless, Inbound grabs a couple of kills for it.
This is a well-thought-out draft from Obey. Again, Jormungandr are going to be left on that island the entirety of the time. You have a Hercules in duo lane, and you have a Thor in your jungle. It means that anyone over there in that long lane is going to be under constant pressure. It doesn't matter if you lose out on your back camps. It doesn't matter if Ducky falls behind even a little bit, because you know he's going to be able to maintain safety on this Jormungandr pick. And that opens up the map for Sino to just play where he needs to, and it's around that duo lane, around mid. That's where Obey are going to look to establish their leads. It's really off the back of Sino and Inbound playing in conjecture and finding the picks themselves. And then from there, you have to find an objective to really establish a lead. Obey has burn potential inside of this Merlin, hasn't quite found enough of a gank, not clean enough of a kill to really look towards that Gold Fury just yet. But they're starting to establish small leads. Nearly 2K now, Obey are in the lead, 8.5 minutes into the game. And they're on pace to maintain it.
And about 200 of that gold lead is in the mid lane. Another 400 or 500, maybe the largest discrepancy there is Wowie over Zapman, to be expected once your lane has been just kind of piled on by Sino up to this point. Sino makes his way over to the short lane, though. It's a good stun down onto Scary D. No Anvil of Dawn, otherwise you might put your money on Sino looking for a return drop over onto Scary D.
Scary now shown that he's incredibly squishy there. Sino could look to find that gank, but the CC immunity that Amaterasu has in her ultimate is going to make it a little bit iffy. And well, if Don's not how you're going to look to engage that fight, you're going to have to really get the jump on him and surprise him with that damage with Hammer. Again, I want to see more aggression in this long lane, continually pressuring out Zapman. Make sure that he can't have a fantastic start. Right now, you've got a slight level lead in Wowie as well as Gold. Keep pushing that. Zapman just now, 9.5 minutes into the game, finishes up his boots. His survivability is going to get a little bit better, but even then, you still have Hercules, you still have Thor. Continue looking for fights. You can't rest on your laurels with this early game draft.
Well, outside of I don't know, four kill turnaround, a quad for Zapman, I don't know if a fantastic start is in the books anymore, as he's 0 for 2 right out of the gates. And though just for a moment, Zapman and Wowie will have some level of equity in lane, or equality, I should say, with one another. Boots, Devo's gauntlets, just a handful of stacks behind. Just takes Wowie going back to complete a few more of those items, 500 gold ahead over in that long lane. Although we're maybe starting to reach the point in Mifflin where we've seen a lot of pressure in the long lane from Sino. Maybe now you're looking for Cubo Fred to do some of that. Drop down the ultimate, look for some of these fights. It's been slow burnings here to start off. Could get worse though, 3 members on the chase, but Cubo Fred won't be picked out this time.
Cubo's got plenty of time to work with. So far, Obey hasn't established enough of a lead for him to concern himself, so he hasn't even had to match Sinoshure's ganks. He's able to just farm up the jungle, establish a level lead by playing the map incredibly well.
Right.
He's going to get that
Good
passive online even quicker. That means his team's going to become faster, stronger, better, whatever that meme is, however it should go. It's going to work out with this Nike passive. They're on fine path right now. PK really not under any pressure because Sino hasn't been able to find enough ganks yet. Bobby gets all the kills for the side of Obey, and even then, his lead is minuscule, only 1 level over Neil. Zapman already closing up the XP and gold there, as Neil's been able to leave him alone since Obey hasn't gone back to find any pressure there. It's slowly starting to slip away from him, the early game for Obey.
Well, you see maybe the mindset from Cubo Fred will connect with the disarm, but Wowie had enough vision there to realize Cubo Fred was moving in. Just a little bit of a lifeline. Sometimes it doesn't always need to be a kill from a jungler to kind of give you some help here in the long lane. Sino will dunk down looking for the return gank. It's 3 versus 2-ish as Neilma just lurking over by the red buff side. Cubo is going to start up this purple buff. Sino close by, though, taken somewhat low. Zapman has to use the beads here. Zapman now uses the ultimate as well. But you got to go down to an enemy. Wowie is going to be that answer. Wolfie tries to pull back in some damage, but the Knights are just a little bit healthier. Sino tries to put down 1. He's able to get the kill onto Cubo Fred, a 1-for-1 trade. Now Scary D is stunned down. It looks like the Knights are the ones feeling a little bit more confident. Off in the Harpy Pit is Ducky. No World Serpent to save you this time. Pittsburgh Knights, they knocked their second kill. No Bay only get 1.
That's PK's aggression as well. They try to move in and steal that red buff away. Even despite having the more late game centric team, they still take the fight and win it handedly. Now Goldfree, 50% health, inbound, the only one in range to defend.
And is not going to be able to take it away. So the Knights will get themselves a 2-for-1 trade and a Fury. It's Gold Fury at this point to kind of bring back a level of evenness to that gold differential. Right back to even is the proper English way of wording that statement, I suppose. Scary D did rotate over here for this fight. 1-0-1 now on this Amaterasu. It's not an execution in the sense of, an Achilles type solo laner, but Scary D, we have seen absolute massive performances on this Amaterasu once the mid-game rotation stage starts to set in.
Ama brings so much to your team. Speed stim, power stim, to everyone that's standing near. She's going to make it much easier to shred objectives with her passive, the CC immunity on her ultimate, followed by a stun, and the burst potential if you use her 2 alongside it. That's so much he's able to bring. And Scary, already with a level up on Ducky, already has the gold free confirmed on the other side of the map. He's been able to get most of the totem of the coup about 50% split right there in favor of Obey Alliance. So far, Ducky hasn't been able to leverage his pick at all. He's not drawn any aggression his way. He's not been able to rotate into the fight, but that was the plan. They left him on an island thinking that they were going to be able to get a lead elsewhere. Obey looking towards the long lane or the mid lane, but they weren't able to establish it there either. Now, you talked about proper English earlier. Let's throw that out the window. Even is ahead if you are PK. 37 to 37 right now stands the gold. That's absolutely fine. They know that they're going to scale much, much better than Obey are in the late game, and still, they're not pressed at all. They're looking for early game aggression, but it's quiet aggression, slow aggression. They're moving in very evenly towards these red buff invaves, towards these gold fury takeaways. So far, Obey hasn't been able to match the map pressure or the level of farm.
Well, we've already gone over, math and English so far. We need some science and maybe some geography to really round out this lesson here in Game 3 between Obey and the Knights. You can see Neo just kind of lurking by that long lane. Won't be much, but what you can maybe see instead is Paul suddenly engaged upon by Sino. Ducky inbound. He's here as well. Sino unable to take to the skies. The collapse is there from the Knights. And maybe a touch too deep for Obey on that engagement. Ducky is going to try to World Serpent away, but Neoma finds himself immediately back in the front line. Wolfie stunned down, deleted by Cubo Fred, and enough damage is there for Paul to get the kill as well. A 3 for none, and the Knights, they're bearing down, and they're going to rotate over to this Pyro.
Pyro, maybe even Fire Giant, 3 dead for so long, and they have so much burn potential with this Amaterasu. They've got a very easy time going into Fire. Ducky doesn't have his ultimate available. No one's going to go in here. Yeah, 15-minute Fire Giant doesn't happen too often. We talked about math. We talked about English. How about history? Obey take another engagement knowing that they lost the last one instantly? That's pretty short-term memory. Maybe they stop the Fire Giant here, though.
I'm not sure they're going to be able to. Now Ducky on a 37-second cooldown. Perfect juggling of the FG aggression as well. All 5 members of the Knights were able to get out alive. Ducky just ranging somewhat close, and maybe you have to do it in this moment if you're Ducky. You have to make the attempt, because at 15 minutes in, a massive swing in gold and potential gold now. All 6 towers still up for Obey. So maybe Ducky in that moment realizes he has to try to take that away.
Obey is going to be looking for hero plays constantly now. They can't slow down. They can't buckle down and wait for PK to come to them. They are the aggressors in the early game. 16 minutes in, now 5 members strong with Fire Giant on the side of PK. Obey is going to have to do something incredibly insane to stop the pressure. Now 6 towers left on the map that Obey have standing. That's free gold for PK. Their Siege D is insanely strong. Scary D is going to have a fantastic time diving the backline. Now Bobby's a little bit behind himself. He doesn't have Fire Giant. He's going to be a very easy squishy target for 5 members with Fire Giant to go ahead and look at. So their front line's going to be lacking for Obey. Ducky's truly the only one that can take any amount of damage, and even then with his build, not tanky enough, he'll get shredded instantly. PK could decide a 5-man group and start taking towers, or they could split the map.
Oh, here's your geography lesson. It's 4 members of the Knights bearing down on the long lane. A tier 1 tower won't fall just yet, as the lane hasn't pushed itself all the way forward. Scary D and Sino just kind of chasing one another over on the right-hand side of the map. Maybe a little bit more even. Scary D, 3-level lead. Sino has already used the hammer teleport, but won't be much more for Scary D to chase down. Tier 1 tower has fallen over in the long lane. Tier 1 tower in the mid lane is down as well. So the Knights, who just had a small lead, 2k or so right after that Fire Giant, pull it a little bit further. And hey, great timing on the Primal Fury respawn as well. Obey Alliance might look to fight themselves back in. It's only 2 members of Obey here beneath their tier 2 tower, and they're just going to zone out for Zapman to take down the Fury.
What did I say I wanted the gold lead to be for Obey around that 20-minute mark? 18 minutes in. Yeah, now it's about 5,000, close to 6 in favor of PK instead. They had the late game draft. They won the early game. They won the mid game. They get a 15-minute Fire Giant, and now they're stripping away the towers. Obey, it's going to take a lot for them to find their way back in. Maybe a 5-man dunk into a 5-man airstrike, into a 5-man boulder toss. That ought to do it for them. But short of that, PK can play as slowly as they want to, knowing that they scale incredibly well in the late game. They can push this lead slowly, then go back to farming and just use Fire Giant to deter any aggression from Obey if they so choose. All the neutral objectives are down. No timer left on the board. PK just sitting comfortably. They should be able to either win or lose this game. It's their choice. They have to choose to lose at this point, if you ask me.
We've just added philosophy to our course load as well. 18 minutes in, Sino will be under a little bit of aggression from Cuvo Fred as Cuvo will leap forward. Sentinel of Zeus will come out to play as well. Won't result in Sino dying off. I mean, Mifflin, this is arguably and maybe inarguably the slowest start we've seen for Sino since he joined this Obey team. He's found some kills, found some ganks, but hasn't converted those into the massive 6-1 and whatever we've normally seen him at about 20 minutes in. It's now no more towers in the short lane, one more over here in the long lane, one more in the mid lane. 15 seconds left on the Fire Giant, but it's going to be tier 2 tower. So 2 open Phoenixes, Mifflin, 20 minutes in. Maybe I do agree with you. Maybe the Knights do have to choose to lose this game, but if Obey are choosing to win, what hope do they have at maybe delaying here? Maybe you have to take this fight beneath your tier 2 tower. I'm not sure they're going to be so keen to do so, though.
Well, they do try and take it themselves. Bobby's able to burn the beads off the back line.
And Sino will take to the skies. Where does he dug down? Wolfie has burned down so much damage. Sino, 3-man stun in the back line of the Knights, and will spin to win, down 1 kill. Zapman full-on retreat. Wolfie flickers forward. Cuvo Fred taken low. Zapman looks like he's going to be able to get out of this one alive. Somehow Sino makes the miracle play, stuns down a couple, gets a kill, and stays alive. Could have been a lot worse there, I think, for the Knights if Sino were any higher on the health bar.
PK just overstay a little bit too long on that tier 2 tower. Fire Giant buff falls away. Wolfie drops so many people to about a quarter health with his abilities. From there, Sino cleans it up.
Zapman, you've been given a second lease on life here, and you've used it to walk right back towards Obey, who will pull him back in. Wowie snags the kill. You gotta be kidding me, now it's Obey 20 minutes in who are gonna turn their eyes towards the Fire Giant.
You asked what the swing could be. It's exactly that. I said a 5-man dunk. 3 might just be enough. Fire Giant a little bit overzealous, and Obey realize that and back off themselves. But still, it's 7,000, close to 8,000 gold in the leader PK. And they are going to have defensive positioning around this Fire Giant again. The tower is already cleared off. The only thing standing between PK and a set win are 3 Phoenixes. Right now, Obey do get some fine return kills, but not quite enough to swing it back in their favor. And PK just about fully spawned up. They get the positioning around Fire Giant. No one's going to be able to push in. They'll likely wait for Zapman to come back online before they look towards it. Obey really don't have any skin in the game. What's their defense potential on Fire Giant? It's incredibly low. Maybe some steal. Maybe send Bobby in and just have him try and steal it away with a heroic boulder or a driving strike. Have Ducky trade his life for it. But on a 5-on-5 engagement from completely even, Obey has no right winning it.
I am curious, though, because now the Knights have expended every non-respawning resource on the map, in particular the 6 towers for Obey, all taken down. Of course, 3 Phoenixes still left standing. Is that maybe an opening, though, where Obey can start to pull back some of this gold lead? The Knights are just going to have to keep farming, looking for kills, maybe these big objectives. How heavily do maybe Obey start to push down some of these towers to scrape back this gold lead a little bit?
They're going to have to kill someone on the side of PK first, and that's a tough task considering the XP
it's an
and
easy
gold
question.
right now. Yeah, maybe once they kill those guys, then yes, the tower is going to even out the gold just a little bit. Maybe get a gold Fury on the tail end of it on a Fire Giant, but that's history and fairy tale as Cynosure falls down to Paul. That's not how you're going to want to start the defense. Now, 4 members stronger Obey, 5 on the side of PK. They can either go for a Phoenix or go straight to Fire Giant. Either way, the defense potential is not there.
Hey, my question has some validity. The wave pushes down the tier 1 tower in the long lane, so it is possible, but it is Sino that ends up falling on Obey's side here. The question of the day is, would they move into contest? No, but they might be happy to trade out the Oni Fury here. I don't see a world where the Knights are able to make it over that far to contest, not with how fast Obey are taking it down. So it's Oni Fury locked in, counteract a little bit of the map pressure that the Knights have been able to build up here. But you've got 5 members of the Knights full on with the FG barreling down towards your base.
Yeah, they're running faster because they have Nike passive, and if they catch out anyone on their own, you got Zapman with his ultimate able to get there literally instantly. So Obey are going to have to stay stacked up. If they decide to split this off 4-1 at any point and the engagement starts, PK could just send Zapman to the 1, turn it into 3 versus 4 and a 2 versus 1, instantly blow them up with the lead. Obey's going to play this incredibly adeptly on the defense. PK's siege is incredibly strong, but Obey's got decent counter engagement tools. If Bobby's able to find a pull to stop the engagement before it starts, maybe Obey can chain CC just long enough to get a pick and stop the aggression there. But it's a tight window that they're going to have to play with. Obey, again, they're going to have to play as close to perfect as possible, and then even then, pray for some slight mistakes from PK to stop the engagement. And PK, playing as slow as they are, I don't think they're going to make any mistakes.
Yeah, it's been slow goings here from the Knights, but I guess you can't really mistake slow with too passive. I mean, it's very calculated here from the Knights. Clear out the Oni waves, only one left standing over there in that long lane, and now 2.5 minutes left on the Fire Giant. It's not a question 25 minutes in of what tower do they push, it's how do they split up, barreling in towards the Obey base. The Oni minions actually are going to be kind of foregone here. Instead, maybe the jungle, a little bit more important for the Knights to lock down, take the red buff away, try to choke out Obey as much as the Knights are able to, and prevent them from pulling back any of this gold.
Knights clear out every single Oni minion wave. They don't want any way that Obey can find any sort of purchase in the storm that is this poor gold deficit, now 10,000 in favor of PK. What can they do, Obey? We've seen it right now. They can't move up and look for a picks despite PK being split across the map. They have to maintain defensive positioning around each one of these Phoenixes. PK, not going to make any mistakes, push up almost every single wave. Mid's about equal. They're not worried about that one. Now if they split the push here, Obey is going to have to contend with 2 separate pushes that they're not favored on either one. I would imagine Obey decide to give up 1 Phoenix and then immediately engage on the split offside. If they could send 5 members to the left and then maybe wipe them over there, that might be a way in, but Ducky left alone against 2.
Wowie is here, though, to assist his solo laner. Maybe a fifth, rather, maybe of the Phoenix health chipped away at Cuvo, Fred, and Scary D on one side. Zapman, Neuma, and Paul off on the other. Waiting now for one more wave to move themselves in. Watch out, though. Cuvo, Fred, and Scary D have a very potent 1-2 combination once those ultimates start to connect. Cuvo, Fred will let it fly first. Scary D looking for the follow-up there. Wowie has just been chipped away, but he's out of this fight. Sino, Anvil of Dawn. Where will he choose to slam down? Misses the stun over onto Zapman, who uses the beads, but you can't beads out damage, and he learns that the hard way. Sino evaporates Zapman's health bar. Sino will have to retreat back to the fountain. Scary D is low, but looks like Obey won't overextend here as the right side Phoenix is taken down.
Zapman getting a little overzealous. That ultimate goes a tad too deep. Obey not going to let you sleep on it. Do find the pick, but they lose their Phoenix in return. Had PK decided to just maintain their position around the left side Phoenix, the 5-man rotation from Obey could have been punished by another Phoenix going down. Instead, they rotate in, try to stem that bleed, make sure that no one else falls, so only Zapman is going to be down for the next 20 seconds. Obey aren't going to be able to swing anything back, though. They can't fight into this Fire Giant. It just falls off. Now 1 minute left on the respawn. They can't find a tower either. The gold lead's going to maintain, but now Phoenix down for the side of Obey. Luckily for them, it is the Phoenix on the side of the Fire Giant, so it's going to be a little bit easier defending and making sure those fire minion waves don't flood into your base. If you do decide to go into the Fire Giant, which I think in of itself might be a mistake, you might want to just hang back if you're Obey and try and defend again.
And what we did see last time was Obey realizing Fire Giant was fruitless, so they pivoted over towards the Fury. Very similar on the respawn timers. Fury just about 5 seconds behind. So absolutely will be an option if Obey maybe you want to trade out the Fury instead of maybe trying to contest over on this FG. Might not have the chance, though, and that's Wolfie. I assume he had to flicker away. Pyromancer locked down, though, by the Knights. At this point, maybe you're just trying to build up as deep of vision control as you can. Just really sense out where Obey are looking to fight from.
Obey are showing a lot of presence around this Fire Giant. It seems like they're willing to dig their heels in and die on this hill. this might be the decisive fight of the match. If Obey lose this, that's game. If they win it, they might be able to swing a Phoenix themselves or get the Fire Giant and completely turn it on its head. Cubo drop it to half before the engagement starts. It's rough, but Fire Giant does the same.
Fire Giant taken down easily by the Knights this time. How about the fight after? Will Sino will drop down onto Zapman, and again, the jungler will get rid of the Knights Hunter. Cubo Fred, massive shield. Wolfie slowed down. Scary D is disengaging from the fight, but that's a leap right back in. Sino, though, has found a double kill and airstrike defensively from Wowie. Scary D dashes his way back through. Wowie won't be able to crit himself out of this one. A triple kill for Sino. Keeps Obey Alliance in this game. Mifflin, the chase is on inbound, is going to rotate through a wall down onto Scary D. Dash to the side, away from the wall. That's a driving strike over onto Neomon. It'll be a triple kill where Sino will dust off the hands.
Conventional Smite knowledge be gone. Obey says, you know what? We drafted early game. We're going to lose that. We might as well win the late game. It doesn't matter to me. They take the fight. They get it evenly. They do lose Fire Giant. Now only 2 members of PK have it, but Obey have effectively bought enough time for their Phoenix to respawn. They don't have to worry about that siege potential nearly as much as they did beforehand. XP and gold are starting to close up and mean less as time goes on. Most members approaching level 20. This is clean play from Obey on the defense, all off the back of Sinosure, almost like all of Obey's games at this point, we could say it. Finds the triple kill to slow out the match. Now, they can completely reset to even and start to take more fights. Next Fire Giant's going to be very easy to defend. They should have their Phoenix back online, but Sino in there?
Oh, he wanted it, but didn't get it. Beads used. So 155 seconds left on that cooldown. It's going to be closer to 2.5 minutes on that one. So aggressive play there from Sino, but how dare I ever doubt him? What did I say? You know, he was 1-1-2, and I said, hey, this is kind of an uncharacteristically slow start from Sino. You just got to give the guy some space to operate. Now he turns it around right back to 6-2-3. Wowie absolutely pouring out some damage in that previous fight as well. It's only 2 members now for the Knights left alive with this Fire Giant. Right side Phoenix has respawned, so maybe that's the easiest target for the Knights to look for.
Look at the relic usage on the side of the Knights, though. They don't have any available as the engagement starts.
A good engagement there. Sino taken down first off. That's always going to be a winning strategy here for the Knights. Ducky World Serpents through. The knock-up not there from inbound. 4 versus 5 underneath this mid lane Phoenix. And they're just going to wait. They, being the Knights, are just going to wait for those minions to kind of pour through to that right lane with the assistance of those move in, maybe take down the right side Phoenix. Instead, for the time being, it's still middle lane, and enough wave clear from Wolfie is going to keep the Knights at bay.
The actives are coming up. Frenzy is also available, and that minion wave on right being uncontested, that Phoenix is falling. Someone's going to have to rotate, and the second they do, PK are going to have their window in.
Well, Ducky maybe realizes that the fight is more important than the right side Phoenix. Down goes Wolfie, but Scary D does as well. Paul still in the fight. Thunder crashes away. Ducky doesn't have the World Serpent to stay alive, and Zapman will gun him down. It's Neo in the backline looking for the stun on an inbound, but the belly flop out will be successful. Right side Phoenix did end up getting taken down, but it was maybe a defense that Obey had to take in sacrifice of their Phoenix.
Man, Obey is really not making it easy for PK. They all make it out, barring Scary D, with about 1/10 of their health intact. Sino wasn't even in that engagement. We're not going to call it the Sino show anymore. He gets picked out before that fight even starts. The rest of Obey really step up the bat, and they're able to reflect that siege from PK. They do, however, get that right side Phoenix in favor of them just by putting the pressure in mid, forcing Ducky to stop his rotation, and the Phoenix will fall in response. Fire Giant now spawning in just about 1 minute. Obey have already shown that they're willing to defend it, especially considering it is the easiest Phoenix to defend when you're trying to go into that Fire Giant. Again, how much can you rely on Sino to get triple kills, quadra kills, whatever you need around these objectives? Wolfie's going to have to start dealing some more damage. We're going to need Wowie to get more involved. Bobby might need to get involved in that backline fight a little bit more quickly instead of playing that peel role that he has been for playing for Wowie. That said, Obey have shown me already that they're capable of fighting in despite all the disadvantages, despite having an early game draft, despite PK already having the full usage of that Nike passive and fantastic late game picks. I'm not willing to count them out just yet.
Oh, you sure can't. Levels all 20, everyone almost full build, maybe some blessings here or there. So, you know, a 14,000 gold differential doesn't mean maybe what it used to about 20 minutes ago. Fire Giant, 10 seconds left from respawning. At this point, though, we've seen kind of two metrics from Obey. One, completely leave the FG. One, kind of half-heartedly be around, but don't really fully contest it. Do you think that now we see one step further from Obey, full-on contest, if the Knights start up the FG?
If Obey choose to engage, they're going to have to go even further beyond and dive as hard as they can onto Paul
Right.
to put him down as quickly as possible, because that's the true damage output, and it's reflected on the player damage charts. 21,000 already. Next closest is Nike. If they're able to stop his aggression, if they can find the kill on Paul, the rest of the fight should fall in order. You can rely on Sinosure to find the CC chains. That man doesn't have a true jump in his kit, so what's going to happen to him? The wall's going to come through, which might happen again.
Whoa.
Sino already in the air.
Where will he dunk down? He's looking for Paul, won't complete the stun. Instead, Scary D has found the gank around the back line. Sino goes down as well. That might have been the lifeline for Obey Alliance. A double kill for Zapman. Who needs a good slash line when you're going to clean up the fights at the end of the game? Wowie, I think he's the last line of defense here. Ducky, he's going to be alone on the defense. Mifflin, it looks like the Knights have finally just cleaned up the game.
Man, I guess I should have referred to my Zapman win checklist earlier on. Get camped in the early game, check.
Yep.
Fall
Works.
behind in levels, check. Get your team ahead in gold somehow, check. Turn it around in the mid to late, check. End the game with a negative slash line, check. Yep, everything's coming up, Zapman. And now the Titans should fall relatively uncontested. Ducky can't even get there. Scary's just chasing him around.
That's going to be the game here. Mifflin underneath the left side. Phoenix is Ducky. He'll take a kill with them. It's finally the deicide here for the Knights. Obey, fight valiantly, but a little cleaner, a little better there around the end from the Knights. And you worded it. You said that Obey need to get this early game lead. They need to bring that into the mid game, and it just didn't happen. With that being said, are you surprised maybe with how long this game went despite the Knights being out as far ahead as they were? Is that a testament to Obey and their newfound ability to keep themselves in these games?
Obey hung in there way longer than they had any right to. When I saw that the 4K gold was in the lead in favor of PK at the 20-minute mark, I thought to myself, well, you know what? Easy day, clock in, clock out. I've only got about 5 minutes left here. But Obey somehow extended to another 15 minutes, taking to around 35-minute mark for the game. That's just clean play around the defense. If they're able to clean up their draft phase, if they can maybe shift away from this early game-centric comp and play for what they're good at, which is around that mid to late game comp, especially with the addition of Sinosure to the squad, this team is looking a lot better. And you said it first, despite losing, 1-2 against PK is nothing to be ashamed of.
This Obey team seems to be barreling their way towards 3-game sets. That concludes our lesson, though. We've gone around the world of all these different subjects, and it's the Knights in 3 games who are going to not only conclude the lesson, but conclude our day here in the SPL. And with that, we'll go back to Finch and Agro to break it down.
Hey, I'll take a lecture anytime from Professors Dolson and Mifflin. Thanks, guys, for that great cast. And what a great set, too. It's the Knights that come out victorious, but Obey had every chance to find a victory. And I don't know how much we could have said that in the past, so clearly some nice improvements from Obey here, Agro. And in this last game, what did you see as the big problem? Because it felt like Obey had a little bit of momentum in the beginning, but Knights took control of it throughout the rest of that mid to late game. How'd they do it?
It just felt like experience to me, Finch. I mean, this Pittsburgh Knights team, I think, just understands how to win these types of games a little bit better than Obey does right now. And I think that Sino gets off to a really good start on this Thor, ganks duo lane a couple times. Inbound gets first blood. You're feeling good. You feel like you can really leverage this Hercules really well. But as was my concern during picks and bans, this scaling from the Pittsburgh Knights comp just feels a little bit easier to execute, a little bit more consistent. Paul's able to stay safe in the backline enough to get his damage off the vast majority of the time. Fred was putting out a ton of damage and doing the frontline work at the exact same time, which is very, very difficult to deal with. And it just felt like Obey, we're like a week or two too early for Obey to win this set. You know what I mean? Like you could see the points, you can see how they're getting closer. Sino makes a couple of great plays, gets a triple kill here where it looks like PK have the game by the throat. You feel like they might be able to come back off of that, but Obey just can't transition that early lead that they got well enough in order to win this game.
Yeah, they couldn't quite, connect all the dots, it felt like in this game. And I think that you're right to blame it compositionally. What it felt like to me was Obey were straining themselves to win with this composition. I think it's too hard. I talk about easily applied CC all the time, and it's my main thing I think of with Guardians. And I know that Hercules can be consistent in the late game, but it's just so tough. You have to be essentially perfect, I feel like, to make this draft work in those late game 5-on-5s. Puts a lot of pressure onto Sino and Inbound to be executing that setup for them, and I don't think it was consistently there for them the later the game got and the harder it got because of the deficit they were fighting into. But Cubo Fred, man, kind of showing that I think this Nike jungle just is strong, regardless of who the pilot is at this point.
I agree. I mean, he had nearly 600 gold per minute that game. That's a very, very high rate. Top player damage for the vast majority of it as well. This Nike jungle is just for real, man. And Sino maybe gets a little bit of a taste of his own medicine. Sino's the initiator of
Merlin
this pick.
over.
And I know. I agree. I still think that, I mean, you look at what Paul did on the Raijin. How much more could he have done on Merlin? Probably not that much more, right? I mean, I feel like that the strategy of banning out Paul, unless you can really ban 3 gods just for him and then pick a 4th right in front of him, that's the only way you're going to do it. But when there's 5 top-tier gods that he has access to like this, I really don't see the point. I think getting your priority picks elsewhere is just more important.
Well, the Knights are the ones that came away with the victory. It was classic Zapman style, I suppose, this kind of win. So, of course, who else would we talk to but him for the post-game interview?
Yeah, who else but Zapman's chair? Is that Maxonomic? We can't be showing that on stream, Zapman, if it's not Maxonomic. You should know this, but Zapman is with me.
Hello.
And first of all, let me preface this by saying, doesn't matter, you guys ended up getting the win, but early game kind of gets away from you guys there in game number 3. Sino, early pre-level 5 ganks into the long lane, tough sledding for you guys there early. What's the mindset shift maybe for you specifically in your duo lane at that point after falling behind a touch there thanks to some early ganks by Sino?
I mean, we knew Inbound didn't want to have a repeat performance from, I think, game 1 or game 2 with the Kuzembo. So we weren't really expecting, maybe too much pressure over there. But then Sino kind of, ranked it and ganked us a lot. But after that, we were like, okay, we got to chill in the duo lane. And then pretty much I called my big brother. I was like, yo, Paul, they're bullying me over here in the duo lane. And he just carried, you know what I mean? So that's pretty much what happened.
Hey, and you guys delay the game, and you're able to get online. Some big damage in the final fight to get the win. This is now the 3rd win in a row for you guys, and that ties you for 3rd place at 5-4 up next against SSG, so a chance to even jump up higher. Do you think that you guys have really finally started to find some of that footing, got some momentum rolling forward into a big set next week, or up next, rather, against SSG?
I would say we had momentum, but then I kind of went 0-5 in game 3, so... it might be some momentum, but we definitely got to clean it up. I probably had the worst game of the year in this Obey set, you know what I mean? Right. I think them taunting me in game 3 kind of tilted me. They really had a lot of free real estate in my head. But other than that, I think we're okay. Moving forward, we're probably going to start solidifying our strategies. And we kind of know Space Station's style. They kind of went back to their Season 6 style. So we think we have a good matchup against them, and should be a good set.
Hey, well, big congrats, Zapman. Excited to see the growth continue for your guys here on the Knights. That's all we have for you from Dulcin and Zapman, and that means Finch will take us home.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dulcin. Always great to get a chance to hear there from Zapman as well on the back of a big victory. Even though the game maybe didn't go as well as he'd like to early, he helps finds a way for them to close out that win. And you heard Dulcin talking about the pit aggro. This continues to clutter up our standings, doesn't it? As that now pushes the Knights up a little bit further. It is so close right now. The only ones with any real separation really are our team rival, Space Station right behind them. But then look at that, man. The 7th place team with 3 wins, even Obey now a real threat to win as well. It's just so close.
It's so much fun to watch, dude, because there's no free viewer points anymore. You got to tune in to every single game so you can understand what happened, because it's just impossible to predict these days, and that makes for a fun viewing experience in my mind.
Yeah, me too. It's gotten harder and harder to feel like you know exactly what's going to be happening in any of these sets. So we saw Space Station win up against Sanguine, get some revenge. The Knights take care of Obey to start this off. Obey couldn't do better in their second time around. They did do better, but not enough for a win. And you heard them talking about how we're going to be seeing the Knights again later. They'll be playing Space Station on Sunday. That's a big match. Another one I'm really interested in. How about Sanguine up against Rival? Rival could really create some space. You were able to grab that victory as well. So a lot of big matches coming down the pipeline.
Every match is huge these days, man, because they all feel close. They all feel like it could be an upset, as close of an upset as it can be if there even is an underdog at any given week. I've got nothing else for you. You just have to tune in. You got to watch every single day of the SPL. And also buy gems, buy a Maxonomic chair, and that should be about it. Yeah, that should be good.
Yeah, all that stuff. Make sure that you all are here for the SPL. We will be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, so don't even consider going anywhere else. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate everybody in production for making this show happen, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Peach it.